Sign up to Council's disaster and weather event warning system. Receive alerts about emergency news, severe weather events and other public safety alerts via SMS or email. Registering to the disaster messaging system is free. To register, visit Gladstone Regional Council's Region Watch website and click on the Register for Warnings button. Get ready, Gladstone. Take the steps to protect what's most important to you. Let's be better prepared and protected for emergencies and disasters.
Illegal dumping and littering is a concern across the Gladstone region, with over 134 offences in the last 18 months. Our region is beautiful, but there are a few bad apples that ruin it for the rest of us, and they need to clean up their act.
Commonly found items at illegal dumping sites across the region include car bodies and batteries, mattresses, tyres, white goods and furniture, and green waste. These items can be disposed of at any of the region's waste transfer stations, some of them even for free.
Illegal dumping and littering pollutes our environment, harms plants and animals, and detracts from the enjoyment of our public spaces. It can lead to stormwater and ocean pollution, with large amounts of plastic, sugar sachets and cigarette butts caught in stormwater traps and grates.
It's cheaper for everyone to dispose of waste correctly. Illegal dumping and littering cost our ratepayers thousands of dollars each year in waste management and clean-up. It's also costly for our dumper, with penalties of up to $10,000.
We can all work together to keep our region beautiful and dispose of waste responsibly by placing rubbish in the bins, or even holding onto the rubbish until you're near a suitable bin, and using our local waste facilities. Don't be part of the problem of pollution. We want you to be a part of the solution.
From towns to the bush, illegal dumping and littering is everybody's responsibility. Protect our public spaces and natural environment by doing the right thing for today and tomorrow.
If you see illegal dumping,
Dob in a dumper.
See it,
report it, stop it.
We previously passed a resolution for that, so no resolution is required. Oh, we haven't? Sorry. Oh, we don't need one because of that. Okay, no worries. Well, we'll just note that apology from Councillor Branthwaite. Thank you, councillors. The next item on the agenda is messages of condolence. Do we have any messages of condolence? No messages of condolence. We'll move to the next item on the agenda, which is the prior notifications of MPIs and conflicts of interest, and I have one declarable conflict from Councillor Muscat. Over to you, Councillor Muscat.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I, Councillor Natalia Muscat, advise that in agenda item number G 3.1, Gladstone Area Promotion Development Limited, I have a declarable conflict of interest as I am a director of Strong Communities Limited, who hold a service agreement with the Gladstone Area Promotion and Development Limited, GAPDL. However, although I have declared a conflict of interest, I do not believe a reasonable person could have the perception of bias, because item G 3.1 is a deputation update by GAPDL and is not seeking any decisions from council. I would like to remain in the room if councillors agree.
Thank you, Councillor Muscat. Questions to Councillor Muscat, or do I have a mover whether Councillor Muscat should remain in the room or not? Councillor Churchill.
I'll move that Councillor Muscat remains in the room.
Thank you, Councillor Churchill. Seconded, Councillor Hanson. Any further discussion?
Mr.
Sorry,
Mayor,
Councillor.
do we
Good
need
luck.
to determine first whether a conflict exists?
No, new legislation, we don't have to do that now. So, Natalia, Councillor Muscat has declared the conflict is there, or has declared a conflict. We don't need to vote anymore whether a conflict exists because the councillor has already identified that there is perceivably one there. We know the crazy legislation, but it is what it is, and this is how it is now. So, yeah, I asked the same question myself this morning.
No, that's the same with me. I've already declared an interest, but I'm appointed to the GAPDL from council, but it's already been declared.
Thank you. Councillor Muscat.
Yeah, I could just add that if it was a normal agenda item, I will probably will leave the room, but because this is only a deputation and it doesn't require a decision from council, I like to stay to listen to the information. The other thing is also that we have a relationship under the Communities for Children program, which is not really related to any tourism or business economic development part of the GAPDL operations. So I guess I really like to get an update on what they're up to in that area.
Thank you, Councillor Muscat. We have a mover in Councillor Churchill and a second in Councillor Hanson that you remain in the room. I put the motion. All in favour? That's carried. Councillor Muscat will remain in the room. Thank you.
Mr Mayor, before you move on, can I just ask a brief question? Is that for the purpose of the exercise, is there ever a deputation where we end up making a decision?
Possibly, yes.
We make a decision on every deputation, Councillor Churchill, because it's moved and seconded that the report or decision-making process be received. So if you're hanging your hat on that one, won't work.
I wasn't going to try and hang my hat on it. I'm just effectively, every time there's a deputation, we're drawing a long bow in every aspect that comes from these deputations, but I understand the legislation, even though I don't agree with it.
Thank you, Councillor. No further conflicts of interest. We'll move to the next item on the agenda, which is G6.2.1, which is the Mayor's statement on current issues. I'll move to that first before we do the confirmation of the minutes. And the Mayor's statement on current issues today. I'd like to start by thanking Senator Anthony Chisholm, who visited Gladstone on February 3 and hosted an inland rail roundtable at the Gladstone Engineering Alliance. The Central Queensland Regional Organisation of Councils commissioned a report which will be released very soon, next few days or early next week or later this week, which proves the connection to Gladstone is the best economical port destination. And I can't wait till that report is tabled and all the media can see it and the state and federal government can read it and understand exactly why connecting the inland rail to Gladstone makes more sense than anything else. On the 4th of February, Councillor Goodluck and CEO Lisa Dowling and I attended the first CQ Rock meeting for 2021 in Rockhampton. Regional Queenslanders working together. And during that meeting, the Electoral Commission of Queensland declared the poll in the local by-election and Councillor Tony Williams was sworn in as Mayor. So congratulations, Tony. Last week, I travelled to Canberra with Bundaberg Mayor Jack Dempsey to represent Queensland councils at the Australian Local Government Association Strategic Planning Meeting for 2021. Now, while ALGA will continue to lobby on many issues that affect local government across Australia, we agreed to focus our attention on 5 key areas, and I think it's important that we go through those. Roads and infrastructure, waste and recycling, disaster resilience and mitigation, a seat at National Cabinet, and most importantly, the highest priority is financial sustainability for local government and a return of our financial assistance grants to 1% of Commonwealth taxation. These untied grants reduce the cost to ratepayers, and especially for our smaller rural and regional councils, this funding helps with operational costs. On February 11, Queensland Minister for Communities Leanne Enoch was in Gladstone, and we took the opportunity to show the Minister around the Phillip Street Communities and Family Precinct, which is on target for completion in June. It's fantastic, by the way. For those who haven't seen it and driving past, you can see the roadworks there are doing very well. So I thank the member for Flynn, Ken O'Dowd, for that $20 million he injected into the duplication of that road and all the partners in the Phillip Street Community Precinct. On the same day, the Coordinator General gave the approval for the Alpha HPA project to proceed in the Gladstone State Development Area, and that's fantastic news. Global demand for high-purity alumina is growing fast, and the material can be used for applications such as coating for lithium-ion batteries, in LED lights, and scratch-resistance glass in iPads and iPhones. And yesterday I attended the final Queensland Connects workshop with Team Gladstone in the MIT REAP, which is the Massachusetts Institute of Technology Regional Entrepreneur Acceleration Program. Now, this program has been supported by the team at Queensland University of Technology with funding from the Queensland Government's Advanced Queensland Initiative. Kate Jones, when she was the Minister, announced $300,000 for Gladstone, Toowoomba and Mackay, and we had our final workshop there, and I know our Economic Development Specialist is with Team Gladstone for the second day of that workshop today in Brisbane. Team Gladstone region has been and will continue to focus on their must-win battle, which is supporting innovation-driven entrepreneurship, which diversifies our regional economy, exactly like what we're doing at Gladstone Regional Council, to connect, innovate and diversify. Well, this weekend we have the Agnes Blues Roots and Rock Festival, and the 3-day passes have completely sold out. And last time I checked, you could get tickets for the Saturday or the Sunday. There's only one day available left, so it's fantastic to see that event being so popular, not just locally but right across Queensland. So if you jump onto their website, their Facebook, and have a look, you can still get tickets for one of the days. I think it might be Sunday. We'll check that out. And also, of course, coming up is the Gladstone Region Community Musical, Legally Blonde, and that will start on the 25th and to the 27th of February, and then it continues on the 5th and 6th of March. And I'll wrap up by thanking Shadow Minister for Local Government for Queensland, Anne Lay, for being here this morning and meeting with councillors. She provided a briefing, and councillors provided a briefing back to the Shadow Minister on the issues important to the Gladstone region. That's my statement on current issues. I'd like to move to the next item on the agenda, which is a confirmation of the minutes, G2.1 for the 2nd of February 2021. Mover, please. Thank you, Councillor Hanson. Second to Councillor Trevor. No business arising. Put the motion. All in favour? It's carried. Now we have a deputation from Gladstone Area Promotion Development Limited, and I invite Chief Executive Officer Gus Stedman, Tourism Manager Nicole, and Communities for Children Executive Officer Wendy to the table. Thank you, Wendy, Nicole and Gus. And I'll hand over to you, Gus. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Burnett. Thank you, councillors and the council executive staff for this opportunity. Today, GAPDL are going to present a snapshot of the results and activities up to December 2020, and we will be doing a 3 deputations during the year to update council. So without any further ado, excuse me, in the technology, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that we meet on today, the Gurang, the Byali and the Taralang Bunda people, their elders past, present and emerging, and I'd like to pay tribute to them and all of our Indigenous members of our community. So thank you very much. We've got a limited time frame today, so we won't dwell on the slides too much. The budget in review, we are looking to return a surplus budget for the 3rd consecutive year. There's some slight ups and downs there on prior year. Membership, of course, we only charged for 6 months membership for our normal members with the COVID thing, and in line with all the other RTOs in the state. Cooperative marketing will be in balance. C4C income will remain in balance, and expenditure in line with previous years, and we have had some additional government incentives as the PAYG refund and the additional marketing boost that was provided by the state government for restart marketing. So finances are all in line. Our visitor information statistics, just in the interests of brevity, we will keep it brief. The overall 6 months visitor statistics in Agnes Waters, up 1,228 people, Gladstone down 1,046, and I guess you could just put that 1,000 people down to the amount of international visitors that we would normally get through visiting Heron and Wilson Island that come to town the day before or the day after. And so that's pretty much, I think, is a pleasing result. Shows growth in the Discovery Coast tourism area, which I think evidentially we all know that's been happening. international visitation statistics year ending September. We all know that the IVS and the NVS numbers are 3 months lagging. They come from things. Obviously, there's been a massive decline in international visitation. However, from July through to September, the Gladstone region of the SGBR in this reporting period recorded the highest growth of the Capricorn and Bundaberg regions in the SGBR, something like a 40% increase. So, we're very pleased with our visitation results up to the end of September. And our domestic visitation numbers on our occupancy up until December 2020, we just want to highlight the 2 points there. In December, we had a 15.5% increase in accommodation for the Gladstone region, and RevPAR year to date, which is, average daily rate is up 10%. So our operators are enjoying increased yields, albeit, from July through back to March 2020, there was some very lean periods for the operators, as we all know. So on the right track there, I believe that we are heading in the right direction from tourism numbers. And when the business travellers resume this year with all the shutdowns, our accommodation sector should be very robust and very strong. So looking forward to a good year in 2021. Membership, there slows a slight increase. However, we need to bear in mind that Uralla have changed their lifestyle packages to exclude us from having a single membership, so people couldn't buy a membership as a single person of GAPDL just to get the Uralla lifestyle card. So what we lost 20 odd individual members, we've gained in businesses and operators. So overall, it's been a great result. And our events team have been working very hard. I'd like to point out the Jumpstart City Heart event that we ran with Kylie's team, young Emily Costello, and for the sundown markets in the City Plaza. Initially, the concept was to do an in-store pop-up, but we decided to go into the City Plaza through logistics, and just the ambience that was created was fantastic. A measure of success, the Rotary Club ran 18 ham raffles over the 2 nights and raised $900 in profit for the community. The food vendors that operate businesses within the City Plaza precinct reported great turnover for those days. So we didn't bring additional food operators in to compete with them. We complemented them with market stalls and entertainment, and we're really happy with the outcome. The GAPDL Charity Days, pretty much a networking day for people like us. We returned about $10,000 to community projects, $3,000 to the Agnes Ambulance Committee, $2,000 to the Gladstone Junior Golf Club to support them, and around $5,000 to the Smith Family Gladstone, which was C-Link, our major sponsor's designated charity. So very happy with our events team. And we've got 2 new micro-information hubs just come online. The Calliope Historical Village, we're working closely with Mary Lou out there, and the Junction Cafe at Tannum Sands, which is open 7 days at Tannum. Just put some brochures in and things like that. So we're really happy to be expanding our footprint of places where visitors can get information. And Rachel, our membership officer, is working with those people to make sure that they get the best possible service. So I'd like to pass over to Nicola, if it's okay, to deliver our tourism marketing update.
Thanks, Gus. I'll start with tourism marketing in an aviation space. So you may have already seen the following campaign that we do have out, which is our Super Sale, and that's in conjunction with Alliance Airlines and Departure Point. So the Super Sale started at the end of October and it's now been extended through till March, and we do have 2 packages on offer. So we do have a Gladstone package and an Agnes Water package. Both packages include airfares, accommodation, car hire, and either a resort credit or a breakfast voucher. From October to December, the reach of these on a paid social media campaign, we've reached over 1 million people. We've had 25,000 link click-throughs, and it's generated over 101 inquiries through to departure point. From the 101 inquiries, it has at the moment only currently generated 3 bookings. However, based on feedback, it's not ideally where we'd like to see it at. However, based on feedback from departure point, a lot of those people wanting to book were after the Agnes Water package, and accommodation was actually booked out for the periods that they actually wanted to travel, or the sale period of this campaign was not within their travel dates. They're looking more long-term, not short-term. Back on the positives though, the reach of 1 million people, we're still promoting the Gladstone region in such a positive light out there in our 400-kilometre drive radius. Continuing on with an aviation space, so the top one that you can see there, the Welcome to the Gladstone region, that's recently been installed on the electronic billboards at the airport. So that's actually at the back of the luggage carousel in the arrivals section. So just a nice welcome to Gladstone region for those that do visit. We've also installed the You'll Be Glad You Came, so that's a fixed signage in the airport car park. And we also have launched our Airport Ambassador program, which I'll touch on a little bit later. In regards to a marketing space, I hope you've seen or at least heard the You'll Be Glad. So that's our major campaign that's running at the moment, and the first instalment of the campaign was 6 billboards that were installed within our 400-kilometre drive radius. So they're all focused on the You'll Be Glad. Our main slogan is You'll Be Glad You Came. However, depending on what we're marketing or who we're marketing to, we can actually target that further. For example, You'll Be Glad You Fished Here, or You'll Be Glad You Snorkeled Here. So the purpose of these billboards was an awareness campaign, so really one key image, the slogan, and the call to action being our Gladstone region hashtag. Leading on with the You'll Be Glad campaign, we then launched an always-on paid social media campaign, and that's with the 5 tiles that you see here, which are on Facebook and Instagram, on posts and in stories. So again, this was more of our summer campaign that started in November, and it has continued through and still running at the moment. So really focusing on the islands, the reef, the fishing, and those type of summer experiences in the region. At the moment, from November to December, we've reached over 1.1 million impressions on social media, reached 377,000 people, and over 5,000 link clicks through to our website, gladstoneregion.info. What's really exciting in this space is come Thursday, we're about to change it in conjunction with Easter in Gladstone. So we are working collaboratively with yourselves, and it'll be You'll Be Glad You Came with the Easter in Gladstone logo and images with that. So we're really excited to present the statistics. These ones here are currently pitched at the 400-kilometre drive radius, but with Easter in Gladstone, we are going to target more the southeast corner, so Sunshine Coast, Brisbane and the Gold Coast areas. Looking at our Gladstone region social media channels, so we do have the Facebook and Instagram page. What I really wanted to highlight here is the difference between our Q1 totals and our Q2 totals. I'm not sure if you can see the statistics quite clearly, but it's remarkable results what we've achieved so far. So for example, our reach on Instagram is up 490%, and for Facebook, our total comments are up 1,311%. You probably just noticed that we have significantly invested in a social media space with our campaigns, but it's great to see these results to say that it's actually paying off and we actually are getting the consumers on the other end. These ones here are just some stats in a social media space. I was pretty interested in them, so I thought you might be too. The first one on the left is a Visit Gladstone Region post on Facebook. So this one here was posted in October of last year, and it was the turtle hatchlings at Lady Musgrave Island. So this one post alone on our Facebook channel reached 5.1 million impressions, had a reach of 4.2 million people, had 9.8 thousand comments, and it was shared 27,000 times, all on one Facebook post. This is by far our best performing post yet, and put those stats in perspective, our second best performing post only reached 175,000 people. So it did go viral, and what I guess is really special is that experience is in our backyard, it's in our region, and it shows that there is a thirst for consumers wanting these types of experiences that we can deliver to them. Looking at our Instagram page on Gladstone Region, we have introduced highlights. So when you actually go onto an Instagram page, the first part that you'll see is a business or a person's information at the top, followed by the little circles which are highlights, and then the posts on the actual page. So each month we do a new highlight which is focused on a key theme around the region. So far we've done a highlight on islands and turtles. So it's really just giving the consumer more in-depth knowledge about one particular theme around the region, and they are quite interactive with the users as well. And a lot of the posts within those will actually swipe back through to our website, so they can actually continue to plan and then book their experience in the Gladstone region from there. Last time we were here, we were talking to you about combining our corporate GAPDL website and our consumer-facing Gladstone Region website, and we are happy to say that that now has successfully been done along with a facelift on the site. What I really wanted to also highlight was that the users on the website since inception of the new site have steadily increased as well, which is great to see. The website still has a long way to go. We're really wanting to beef up the content and make it more consumer friendly. And what we're focusing on at the moment is actually the membership portal. So it's a portal exclusive to GAPDL members. And at the moment, we're getting some fantastic footage and photos around the region from influencers or photographers. So we're wanting to put those resources into the portal so our members can leverage off it. They can use it in their own campaigns or on their own websites. So we're working on that at the moment. We have been active in a print media space as well, so this is just a few examples of what we've done recently with Gladstone News. So the first one on the left there was a campaign we did with our members of Win a Trip to Wilson Island. Our KPI for this campaign is what we wanted to reach 150 new subscribers to our Gladstone Region newsletter, which goes out monthly, and we well exceeded this, reaching over 250 new subscribers to our newsletter. And the one on the right was a promotion we did in regards to World Tourism Day in September. We have been working collaboratively with the Ports Corporation as well. So this here was a recent instalment in the Club Marine magazine. So we both had adverts. We promoted the region and GPC promoted the marina. But what was really special with this is we also had an 11-page editorial in the Club Marine magazine. It was actually written by Darryl, who unfortunately can't be here today, but he did a wonderful job with it. So it was really highlighting the diverse fishing we have in the region, the access to the Southern Great Barrier Reef, and our marina and the great facilities that it does have. Reaching this level of publication, Club Marine has over 97,000 paid subscribers, and their reach both in print and digitally is over 400,000. So again, shining Gladstone in a wonderful light. But we haven't forgot about video or TV production either. So we have engaged our local videographer, Stuart Mackay, for some more videos around the region. First of all was Lady Elliot Island. So if you haven't heard already, the Lady Elliot Island day trip from Agnes Water has now been extended until March 2022, which is just phenomenal. This started for a few weeks in a school holiday period, and because of the uptake, it's now been extended till next year, which is great. So as soon as we heard the news, we got Stu out to Lady Elliot Island and we got some highlights videos, and we also have an educational face-to-camera piece with custodian Amy Gash on the island as well. We've also got a face-to-camera, again, educational piece with Adam Balkan from Curtis Ferry Services highlighting Curtis Island, a Lady Musgrave Island highlights video, and then we've also got Turkey Beach and surrounds, more of a fishing focus. So these videos have all been put onto our Gladstone Region YouTube channel, and they also feed through to our website. So again, just boosting the content for consumers once they're on the site. In a TV space, we've been working with Visage Productions. We've had the team from One Road and Our Town in Gladstone, which has been great. So One Road is a collaborative piece that we've worked with Banana Shire and Rockhampton on. So it's a road trip from Gladstone to Rockhampton. We have seen the final proof of this, and it's due to go to air shortly, and we're really impressed with the offerings on that TV show. Our Town is focused solely on Gladstone, and again, we collaborated with local industry and business for this episode. We have only seen drafts at the moment, but again, we're really impressed. It really shows how great Gladstone is to live, work and play here. And we can't forget fishing as well. So we've had Michael Guest and his team from Real Action up, and they're shooting 2 episodes in the region showing the diversity of our fishing offerings as well. So the first one was shot in December and the second one has been shot this month, and looking at proposed airing dates of around March, April. In a tourism development space, we've not only been heavily focusing and investing in our members, but also our volunteers. So as I touched on earlier, we have now launched the Volunteer Airport Ambassador Program in conjunction with the Gladstone Airport Corporation. So in mid-December, we launched with 18 ambassadors, and that was after a full-day training with Amanda Cruz from Success Matrix. So the workshop had over 37 attendees and a 100% satisfaction rate from all attendees. We did keep Amanda in region a little bit longer and ran some workshops with our members as well, so both in Agnes 1770 and also in Gladstone, and that was around consumer experience development. Again, we had over 20 people in each of the workshops, or 20 members in each of the workshops, and delivered a 100% satisfaction rate from all those who attended. So again, just showing that our investment into these programs is worthwhile. That's about it in terms of a marketing development space, but I'll now hand over to Gus, who will touch on cruise and communities for children.
Before you hand over to Gus, that is outstanding. Just want to say what a sensational effort you are doing in promoting our region. Well done.
Thank you.
Chose a good member of staff, didn't I, Matthew? So, guys, I just want to give you a quick update on the cruise restart. We've had two calls last week, one with Clear, Cruise Lines International Association, and ACA, Australian Cruise Association. So we've put a bit of a snapshot together of the cruise marketing. Obviously still under suspension until the 17th of March. When cruise lines return, they will operate at 50 to 75% capacity. There'll be online check-ins with less touch points, extending check-in windows, which will mean that people will be given a time to check in so that they won't have a massive influx of people at 9 o'clock to check in and get them all on the boat by 10. Wearable technology, which will be, wristbands and things like that, so there's no transactions of cash or something on board to swipe and pay, sort of like charge back to your rooms. So that's the start. We fired some questions into the ACA. What can we do to attract more cruise ships? And the answers were ensure the port is vetted to take large ships, which they say is a bonus because Gladstone can get shoreside. Offer competitive pricing, which we believe Gladstone Ports Corp offers great bunkering charges and things like that. Provide COVID-safe activities tours for guests and crew, which we will do. And provide an extensive tour program, which we are working on developing a lot more bespoke tours. We've spoken to Intercruise and Acorn about coming up and doing some familiars and showing them around and developing product in concert with the ShoreX people. Would the cruise lines consider cruises to nowhere out of remote ports, which is, you'll see some of them advertised now, Brisbane to Brisbane, 3 days, and they'll go nowhere very much. But they've said probably not as a home port, but as a transit port, or any newer additional ports would be great for local cruise itineraries. So that would mean that we could talk to them about doing a cruise out of Brisbane or a cruise out of Sydney, stop in Gladstone, turn around and do a turnaround and then go back to Sydney. So it could be 4 days, 1 night in Gladstone, have a massive markets and parties and entertainment and things like that. Gladstone people do know how to party, so we would be very happy to accommodate, a couple of thousand people on a cruise ship. One thing that I said was, would they consider a shoreside party in remote ports if they could secure free berth costs? To get confidence back in the cruising and aviation space, people are going to need to be able to demonstrate that it is safe to do so. So I thought, well, what better place could you pull up than East Shores, put the boat aside, have a party, film a reality TV documentary on a cruise ship, and then, prove to people that it's safe and all of the things that they put in place. So they were saying any cost savings, incentives are looked at seriously, especially if COVID-safe guest programs are also included. So just an idea we threw out there to get things started. So we'll move on to our work plan that we've been working with Kylie and Kim's teams on. So just to give you a traffic light, up to the 6 months, we've got around about half completed and 4 of the last 7 remaining work plan items are work in progress and 3 are yet to be started. But we're comfortable that we will work or pretty much complete the work plan as outlined by council. So we're very comfortable with where we're heading, and we're very comfortable with the feedback and the cooperation and collaboration that we're getting from the council team. So, Wendy? No, I'll keep going with Communities for Children because Wendy's got the shies on. The highlights for July 2020 to December 2020, we've received a 5-year funding extension from the DSS. Unfortunately, there was no opportunity to get extra money to deliver additional programs. However, we have requested to extend our reach to include all of the GRC, Gladstone Regional Council area, which will now include Agnes, Waters and Miriamvale, and 1770. So Communities for Children will continue to aim to deliver positive and sustainable outcomes for children and families in disadvantaged communities throughout Australia. The focus being on families and children are safe and well, strong and resilient and ready to learn. And if we can't make Gladstone a great place for our children, what is our future going to look like? So this is very important to me personally, that we deliver for our kids in this community because they are our future. Our principles, local level management, networking collaboration, client diversity, our service delivery is planning and consultation, contracted community partners like Stronger Communities, and I must say those girls at Stronger Communities, Chantel and Crystal, do an awesome job at delivering these programs. Capacity building, which is about how we get better at what we do and be able to deliver more with less. Stronger Communities, Circle of Security sponsorship and fundraising raised over $16,000, and domestic and family violence education and awareness, we raised an additional $18,300. So Communities for Children this year has raised, outside of their external funding, around about $35,000 in additional funds. So we are very confident that the future looks good for Communities for Children. We will be relocating at some stage to the new precinct at Phillip Street. However, this doesn't cover, this reporting period doesn't cover the Phillip Street, and we will have further updates as we progress there. So just finally, I wanted to give Council a bit of an overview on how GAPDL's board and management are looking to the future. We are looking to grow our organisation to be the leading provider of not-for-profit services in the region. We are not looking to compete with other people, but we are looking to collaborate with other people. So we are there to be a service and a benefit for the whole of community. I always say to people, if it's got a G in the name, it's good for us, it's good for Gladstone, it's good for everyone. Doesn't necessarily need to mean that GAPDL will control it, but we were happy to contribute and to support any organisation that needs our support. So our core focus, obviously tourism promotion through Nicola's team, are doing a wonderful job. My trusted and learned colleague Wendy is doing fantastic work at Communities for Children. We're building a strong relationship with the Discovery Coast and the SGBR. Our people, the feedback from Agnes has been very supportive. We're working with some projects there that are hopefully going to improve the amenity. Regional development is another passion of mine. I believe that as a region, we need to push to work collaboratively with the likes of North Burnett, the Boyne Valley, Rockhampton, Banana, and all of the region, because as a stronger region, if we're not fighting together, other regions will do it on our behalf, and we need to have strong representation and strong advocacy for our communities within this region to make this place a great place to live. Cruise ships, Gladstone Ports Corporation have provided an amazing amenity for us, and no better way to highlight your community than to get an influx of 2,000 people on a regular basis to come and walk around and see what you've got, because those 2,000 people talk to 2,000 people who talk to 2,000 people. Before you know it, hundreds of thousands of people are talking about our region and how wonderful it is. And events. We believe that we can offer more support in the event space for people like GFE. We're working with B2G, we're working with Council on Easter in Gladstone. We are there to provide support services to people who want to run events. We can run our own events. We're talking to Maxine from BTABC about our support for Under the Trees, and we're really here to be able to support our community in endeavours that they want. A hookup, we've got a relationship with the hookup. We'll be at Blues and Roots this weekend for DCTC. with our tent there. We helped at Beer and Cider Festival. We had the Brothers Boys there working the bar at Beer and Cider Festival. We are here to serve the community, and I really appreciate the opportunity to put our thoughts and aspirations to council today. So thank you very much. And without any further ado, we'll take questions from the floor.
Thanks, Gus. That was awesome. Councillors, questions, please. Councillor Churchill.
Thanks for that, Mayor Matt, Gus, Nicola and Wendy, thank you, very impressive. Just a couple of quick questions here. In your report here, and again, a number of us are well-known sea dogs and enjoy the fishing market, the Mad Hueys expedition that came here, is that a major part of our fishing target or just a small part of it?
The Mad Hueys were here, have been here twice. They came on the first tour with the Surfing Life magazine and World Safaris. World Safaris are the largest surfing tour company in Australia. This Surfing Life is one of the largest surfing magazines. So they went on a collective charter on the MyCat cruises to develop surf tours out of Gladstone. The Mad Hueys have a huge following on social media, but they also have some high quality world-class surfers. The midget, Breno, could be surfing on the world tour if he wanted to. So they have some very high quality surfers. Secondly, as part of our sponsorship for the SCF King of Kings fishing tournament, we got a number of teams as part of our sponsorship, and we invited them back up to fish in the competition, which they accepted. We spent a small amount of money accommodating them and keeping them fed and watered while they were here, and we also had them attend the Beer and Cider Festival, which coincided with the same night. We believe that the Mad Hueys give us an opportunity to portray the lifestyle of Gladstone, the demographic of activity, working class, lifestyle thing, that you can attract people to a region like Gladstone where you can earn almost mining wages, have lifestyle rosters, sleep in your own bed every night and spend time with your family, and get to do all of the other things whenever you have days off. So
no, that's fine, Gus.
I hope that answers your question.
It does. So that'll be a continuation of a target market.
Obviously, they are very keen to come back.
Okay, thank you for that. Just another one, and we're going to deal with another agenda item later on, G4.3, which is the operational plan. You've indicated in there, it would be remiss of me if I didn't mention it, but at this stage on the RV marketing campaign, it's not yet started. Just to confirm, but you're actually indicating that that will be done by the end of the 2021 financial year. So that's 30th of June this year.
We're extremely confident that we will have an RV strategy in place by the end of this work plan.
Yeah, thank you for that. Just got two more, Mehmet. You mentioned the restart. This is an important one in knowing this aspect of the RTOs statewide, is that the restart, and from what I understand, the Tourism Events Queensland, due to COVID, they had a budget allocation of somewhere in the vicinity of perhaps $15 million for international marketing. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. And appropriately, because that's unspent, the dispersal will go to the RTOs. Is there an equity amongst the RTOs in the distribution of that funds, or is it, more to the big five and less to the little ones? Can you just confirm that, or give us advice?
I'll give you the answer in two parts. Restart was $4 million fund that was allocated by Treasury for international tourism that was diverted to regional promotion, and I believe we got a more than equitable share of that money, which we are still spending at the minute. I'm very happy to receive that additional funds, and it was in the right-hand column on the budget there. The second part of your question, the $15 million was the election promise from the Labor government to the RTOs over the life of this parliament, an additional $15 million, which is to be split now over $5 million per year for 3 years. The discussion paper is out now, and like I said, is like you mentioned about fair and equitable, that's where we're at. You've got 13 people, 13 RTOs with 13 opinions, all just fighting over one piece of pie. And it is going to be challenging for us to get what we consider fair and equitable. But trust me, Councillor Churchill, I will be in there tomorrow in Brisbane, gloves off, giving it my best shot. I might come away a little bit battered and bruised, but I'll back myself to get a little bit extra.
Yeah, okay. Well, just remember there's strength in numbers because there's the big five,
yes,
but there are the other ones. So, you know, hopefully you're working with the other RTOs, but I'll leave that in your capable hands.
Yeah, I agree, and I understand, and I do understand their point because the international travel is, you know, is a big attractant, and they have suffered major losses. So they have got some reason to be arguing. However, we have to fight our own battles, and we will be doing that as vociferously as I possibly can.
Yeah, look, today's not the day for us to be debating or arguing, but I can tell you, give us the forum, we could argue that point from local government, because if we've got to contribute dollar for dollar, hopefully local government does get a say in that as well.
Just on that, I believe this is over and above the matched funding component.
Okay, so at this stage it's still a draft white paper or green paper.
Yeah.
Do we get an opportunity to have a look at that from a local government perspective, perhaps through the Mayor's office or the CEO's office, before a final decision is made?
Can I ask that question tomorrow?
Yeah, lovely. That'd be great if you could take that on notice.
Yeah, thank you.
My final one, please, and thanks, Mayor Matt, is that you mentioned, and it's wonderful to see the cruise liner industry up there as well, as such, because in another agenda item today, we will be talking about the cruise liner industry, and appropriately, because local government's got a big part to play in that, especially this council. And you mentioned some aspects, but this morning, with the announcement this morning, be it on Sunrise or be it through the media, that the international cruise markets, the Royal Caribbeans, the P&Os, the Carnivals, and the list go on, will now be making Australia the focus of their cruise liner industry. So you might want to catch up on that as part of the COVID recovery, probably because the nation is more safer than many other destinations. But the feature this morning, from my perspective, leads to your presentation today, where you said we get 10,000 people off the vessel, or we can hold the vessel there for a whole day. Are we, or is there a plan somewhere that we could probably talk later on about the operational plan of Gladstone becoming a departure point?
At this stage, I would say we do not have a departure point in our operational planning, but it would be something that we would consider. And, you know, in fairness to not in fairness, but with regards to the Gladstone Ports Corp's operations, they are meticulous in their planning when it comes to the operation and the onloading, and they won't take any chances with COVID safety. Everything will be done to the protocols, and the clear instructions to their members are, if you do not follow these protocols, you will not be a member. So there's going to be some argy-bargy. I understand your point about, you know, Royal Caribbean and all those guys saying it, but I think Australia in general, once international travel comes up, is going to be a destination of choice. Let's think about what we've got to offer that other countries don't. Space, health, community, amenity, room, clean environment, and we're not confined like European cities or larger metropolises. So we've got plenty of space, and anecdotally, people that I talk to online, friends of mine for years, are busting to come back. So I think Australia in general is going to be a destination of choice.
I still believe that Gladstone, be it the 5 to 10 year plan, because that's where we're heading, looking at the front windscreen, is that we should become a departure point, because the greatest attribute that we have is our port. And also the ancillary services.
100%.
But I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Churchill. Councillor Muscat and then Councillor Goodluck had questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. I'm really happy with, I guess, the way you presented that, the information that was in there. I loved all those videos and I guess the way in which you are using technology to support the industry. I also was very interested in your plans to expand your footprint in other areas of the region, like you mentioned Tanham, also Calliope, and you also mentioned that you're going to do a bit more in that area. So I guess I'm saying that from the point of view that I guess Gladstone City doesn't rely on tourism as much for people's livelihoods, but it does in other areas in Gladstone region. So I'm very interested in understanding a bit more what your plans are to expand your footprint in other areas, like you mentioned the Boyne Valley, but again, I've noticed how much work you've been doing in Agnes, and I think that's wonderful too. So is there anything that, what are your plans going forward for regional areas?
Our overarching plan is to try and divert people off the Bruce Highway. Mm-hmm. The more places that we stop people, and like Benarabi, Wonga Dam, once we get them to stop off the Bruce Highway, we're a chance of getting them in. And I know you say Gladstone doesn't rely on the tourism dollar, but every time you increment your business, every time you sell an extra half a dozen meals, or every time you sell an extra tank of fuel to someone that's a visitor, that's an incremental sale on your day that helps the local economy. So all of those dollars that tick into the till are over and above, and they're not being drawn from the community. That's capital that gets drawn from outside, which is really good. I'm a passionate believer in the Boyne Valley Rail Trail. I think that has got the potential for us to set Boyne Valley Rail Trail alight. We're endeavouring to have discussions with hot air ballooning out in the Boyne Valley. So there's lots of blue sky ideas that we've got. And we have to dream big, but then when Nicola brings the reality into things and the planning, sometimes all of those blue sky ideas don't come to fruition. But we have got plans and aspirations to grow our region and to have a prosperous region across all of the parts of the Gladstone Regional Council. Mount Larkham, Calliope, Boyne and Tanham, Gladstone, Discovery Coast, Boyne Valley. We hope not to leave anyone behind. Sometimes smaller communities can feel like they have been ignored, but...
No, I understand where you come from.
But the Bruce Highway truly is the bloodline. We're in a drive market for tourism. Hundreds of thousands of people stay in Rockhampton a year overnight because they've driven from Brisbane. And it unfairly skews their tourism numbers because they're basically just transiting. But anyway, I will take their $300 if they're willing to stop in Gladstone.
Yeah, no,
So,
that's great.
I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, definitely. I wasn't minimising the importance of tourism in Gladstone, but I guess how very important it is in other regional areas. And the other thing I was going to mention is that it's very impressive the reach that you had with, especially one of the posts that you showed us in the presentation. And I guess I need to, since we have the public watching, it is also quite important for the public to maybe share those things. I mean, there's nothing else better than word of mouth. So I know, if I was to, invite my friends and family to come over, not just to my house, but I guess, other places in the area, and I encourage people from the region to do the same, and going to your website, or not website, your Facebook page, your socials and all that. That's something that is actually a lot more powerful than it seems. So, but yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Muscat. Councillor Goodluck, question?
Thanks, Mr Mayor, and thanks for all the great work. It's really pretty awesome to see some of those photos. You know, it's probably not traditionally what a lot of people would, you know, relate to Gladstone around, is that the beautiful reefs and all the wonderful natural attributes that we actually have in our region. So it's great to see that promoted. There's a couple of points in the work plan. The commencement 3.1 commenced delivery of experience development and mentoring programs. So it doesn't go into a great lot of detail, but I think that's really great stuff, particularly, as Councillor Muscat mentioned, places like the Boyne-Tanham area and even Calliope. And there's probably things that they don't have that a place like Agnes Water 1770 has, and that's those experiences, those things that people can actually go and experience when they're in that area. So I like that particular point, and hopefully we might see some development in that space in those other outlying areas. And I don't know if you can talk to that or not, but the other issue, or the other point that I liked around, sorry, I'm getting feedback there, but
Councillor Muscat, you can turn your mic off, please.
Thank you. The 3.3 with the fishing competition event organisers to attract new fishing events and establish an annual fishing tourism product. And I know, talking to the hookup some time ago now, you know, they were doing some work around establishing that fishing tourism strategy. So that sort of leans in, I suppose, from my understanding, around that particular point. And I note that we've sort of had some feedback that we probably don't need additional fishing events. We should work to strengthen and build on the events that we have. I'm just interested in your sort of any extra detail you can provide on that. My thinking would be that, you know, the more fishing events we can have spread out across a greater period of time, the more people we can bring in. But absolutely understand we need to, you know, build and strengthen the existing fishing events that we have. So just from your perspective, what sort of strategy are we looking at in that space, or is it still early days?
Well, the reason that the fishing event's not covered in the report is because it didn't fall within the reporting period. Last weekend we ran, in conjunction with Livingston Shire Council, the Shimano King of Kings tournament, and next year they are looking to expand the boundary to just south of Gladstone, and the following year to include 1770. Now that is a fishing competition of the die-hard fishers. They had 100 and something teams, and thanks to Kylie, she recommended SCF to me, and they've been a very professional organisation to work with, and they've had massive reach. So we'll have a really, really good report on King of Kings for next meeting. But I believe that the serious fishing event, the King of Kings, is a great segue into the hookup. Now, I know that we are in partnership with the hookup, we are lockstep, and we will do whatever we can to make hookup a success. So the two fishing tournaments or events are both fishing events, but of different natures. One's a family fishing festival, the other one's a fishing competition. Sort of like GT Buster, who was fished in King of Kings, has got something like 40,000 followers. Some of these people are, you know, professional social media fishing analysers. So it's the hardcore fishers. The hookup is the family festival where all the locals get together and we have a great time at Boyne-Tanham for the weekend. So I think they complement each other in a way. And definitely including Agnes. And I think the National Light Gear Tournament is on this year in Agnes, which is the guys that bank fish with the light rods for estuary fishing. So that'll bring another couple of hundred people to town. So you know, CT would probably agree with me, too much fishing is barely enough. But it is, you know, a real key strength of our region, and I don't think that we can, underplay our hand in this, because we have some of the best fishing assets in Australia, in this region, and we have a great harbour, great people, so bring it on, I reckon. But in saying that, we are not in competition with anyone. We don't want to go and create a massive amount of events. We want to make good better. So in respect to the hookup with their weigh-in stations and their virtual event, we are there to support them. The same way that we will support DCTC, Harbour Festival, and anyone else that needs it. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. And just lastly, it mentions about the audit of fishing assets across the region. I think said that has been provided, and would like to see that particularly moving up to budget deliberations for council as well. So thank you very much.
No further questions. Councillor Hanson.
Just a couple of things. You've seen that photograph of Yellow Patch. You've got that. That could be something that could rival that. They're already onto it. I knew you would be. And remember, Tenham Sands is only 11 kilometres away from the highway. We're doing that promo, aren't we?
It was initially suggested to put that on the billboard, and it was taken away because we really focused these billboards on the awareness campaign, so it wasn't a directional campaign, but it's definitely still on our radar.
Councillor Trevor.
Thanks, Mayor Burnett, and thank you, Gus and team, for a wonderful report and some great kicking of goals during the COVID crisis. I'm just wondering whether in your travels throughout the region as to whether you're getting any feedback from our local people in relation to any roadblocks that are presently in place so far as our future endeavours in relation to domestic tourism, given that international travel won't be around for some time. And I raise an example, perhaps the boat ramp at 1770 Agnes Water, which has been an enormous problem for some years now. But are you witnessing any other roadblocks that council could assist in so far as making sure that this increased activity to our region is not transient but permanent? And of course, hopefully COVID will come and go, but how do we cement ourselves as a destination of choice into the future once COVID disappears, hopefully, off the landscape, even though present prognostication is that it could be around for some 6 or more years before we finally get that herd immunity and our vaccines rolled out, particularly to our poorer countries. So I'm just anxious to know whether you see anything in your travels that we could do to assist and make sure that tourism becomes a permanent part of our landscape rather than, as I say, a transient thing associated with COVID. Now, I witness every weekend when I go home to Agnes Water, when I can, the great work and efforts that you've achieved to date. Beds are scarce in Agnes Water 1770. Anything we put on are sold out. Tourism is booming. Infrastructure down there, for the attention of councillors, is creaking. Every time I walk up the main street of Agnes Water, I can actually hear our infrastructure creaking under the weight of numbers, the sheer weight of numbers because of its popularity. And we've got people off the Bruce. People have chosen to come in and for the first time witness the great experience that Agnes Water 1770 presents. I'm wondering how we can replicate that and get them to Montana. For example, how do we replicate that and get them to the Boyne Valley? Those are the issues that I'm anxious to ventilate, because I think we have an opportunity now over the next 6 years to capitalise on the enormous good work and effort that you and your team have done in the past 12 months to bring the Gladstone region to the forefront, because there's going to be a lot of competition out there with $30 billion worth of money not being spent on overseas travel in the Australian community alone, and lots of people keen to jump on the bandwagon where the opportunity for international travel will be some years away.
Thank you for raising that very, very important issue, Chris. We'll touch on the Agnes boat ramp first. At last week's Tourism Advisory Group meeting, the council officer indicated it could be almost 5 years before that 1770 boat ramp issue was fixed. But I believe with the right amount of with the right amount of pressure on the federal government with the Building Better Regions Fund, we may be able to put some pressure to bear, because the 1770 boat ramp is a genuine public safety issue. It is the most attended boat ramp in the region, including Bundaberg and Gladstone. That's a DNR survey numbers or Department of Fisheries. So that is a leading concern for that area. We have considered trying to incentivise people to launch their boats from Gladstone as opposed to 1770, but there's no appetite from the southern anglers to travel that extra distance. So that is an issue. Curtis Island, I believe, is potentially one of the biggest potential drivers of visitation and lifestyle issues, and I have received a proposal from John Abbott in regards to a boat ramp facility for small vessels at Curtis Island, which I believe council has already seen. But I believe the ability to open Curtis Island up gives us a great potential for the future to give us another string to our bow. We all know how beautiful Curtis Island is. We've all been to Turtle Street, we've all been to Joey Lee's, we've all been to Cape Cap, we've all been to Station Point, we've all been to Yellow Patch, Hummocky Island. It is fantastic up there, untapped and untouched. One thing that the Water Board has raised with me is black spots in relation to Telstra, communication towers at different parts around the lake, and of course the old chestnut about RV parking in town, finding a suitable place for someone to park for an RV. None of these things are insurmountable, and we understand that infrastructure costs money, but you've got to build it, because when you build it, they will come. And there's no cheaper time to build infrastructure than today, because one thing you can be sure of, only thing that's going to go up is the price. It's still going to need it. The sooner you build it, the sooner you'll reap the rewards from it. So I believe that, you know, we need to, from our position, lobby our federal and state colleagues much harder for funding to develop these infrastructure resources when and if there's funding available, and if it's not available, they can try and find it from somewhere else, because we do need it, especially that Agnes boat ramp. I shudder to think that one day you'll be driving through there and a little kid that's going between the boat ramp and the trailer where their dad's just driven off, and someone drives through that main area there and cleans up a kid, because it's got potential to happen. I think it is a safety issue. It needs to be looked at seriously. And I realise that that whole Marina precinct down there could, you know, a master plan for that would be like nirvana. It'd be the best thing that could happen, is that we master plan that whole corner. But, you know, like, there's commercial realities around that as well. So, but do concur with what you say, but, you know, there's only a limited amount of ratepayers' money to go around, and we need to be mindful of how we spend it and where we spend it. So thanks for the question.
Councillor Grady.
Can I just add to that too? So with the Boyne Inland Rail Trail, talking about Boyne Valley, so The Burt Group are looking at opening part of the tunnel section at mid-year, so hopefully that will then come on board and invite people out to the Boyne Valley, and then they'll be able to go to the national parks out there, Glassford Copper Mine, Norton Gold Mine, and that sort of stuff. So I think that will all attract, and there was a meeting on Friday which Gus attended, so thanks for attending the meeting on Friday, but it was really good because we had the concept designers there as well for the rail trail, so it was great. And thanks so much for the report, guys.
Thanks. Thank you, Gus. Thank you, Nicola. Thank you, Wendy. No further questions, councillors? Councillor Trevor.
Thank you, Mayor. Just while I've got this opportunity, Gus, and remaining focused on the tourism aspect of today's discussion, but with a thought in mind in relation to a matter that is coming up before us in a subsequent agenda item today. Has the GAPTL done any research in relation to tourism numbers increasing as a result of an aquatic centre being built in our region? I think there might be one, I'm trying to remember now, down at Maryborough, perhaps. Have I got that right? Maybe wrong. But wherever it is, I'm just wondering whether you've done any scoping in relation to any visionary project in our region that may result in increased visitor numbers because of aquatic facilities happening at some stage in the future.
There's one at Maroochydore, Chris.
I knew it started with an M, thanks, Councillor Glenn. I just got my wires crossed. I'm just getting old.
Honestly, Chris, until recently I would have said that the ability to get data that granular from tourism would be no, the answer to that would be probably not. But just recently, Tourism Events Queensland have been buying the D-Spark data. It's off a company that's owned by Optus, and the amount of data that they can drill down to a level can give you very, very detailed reports down to the postcode of the people that attended an event. So they track the serial number of your mobile phone through this data, not your SIM card, the serial number. So they pretty much know where everyone came from, and then they geo-target your contacts for similar events. So there is potential now to get this detail at a micro level. Of course, the telcos don't let that go for nothing. So, you know, you can die from analysis paralysis if you want to pay for the data, but how long and how much detail do you need to know, you know? So bums on seats is the best barometer, and cash in the bank, you know? So when the money's rolling in is, you know, it's still been the best barometer in my business experience. When things are starting to pay for themselves and then people are there and you can see for yourself, that's the best data you need. But certainly we would be able to provide much more detailed data in the future, and I'd say within 12 months it'll blow you away what you'll be able to tell about who comes here, when and where, and pretty much why. So sorry I can't answer your question straight away.
All good, thanks team. I think we need to move on to the rest of the agenda, but thank you for that presentation. It was very good. Cheers. Thank you. Yep. And thanks. And councillors, we have a recommendation that the deputation from GAPDL be received. Move Councillor Churchill, seconded Councillor Trevor. All in favour? Motion's carried. Thank you. All right, we'll move to the next item on the agenda, which is G4.1, which is Local Government Debt Refinancing Initiative, and I'll hand to the General Manager of Finance, Governance and Risk, Mark Holmes. Thank you, Mark.
Good morning, Mayor and Councillors. The first item today we have is a proposal with respect to the refinancing of our council's debt portfolio. So as part of the COVID recovery offerings from the state government, the state has offered to all local governments the ability to refinance its loan book, and with the end goal with that being to look at freeing up cash. This is by looking at refinancing at essentially the historical loan interest rates that we have at the moment, in and around 1.7%, and then looking at extending the loan terms out by through to 20 years. So we've done some analysis and worked with both the Department of Local Government, QTC, and also Gladstone Airport Corp, who also have a stake in our debt through our shareholder loan agreement with that business. As part of the analysis also, we've looked at our existing agreements and commercial agreements that underwrite our current debt. So what the recommendation is before you is that we do look at taking up an opportunity, and we've looked at several options with respect to the opportunity. We've ruled out taking out on the refinancing of debt associated with some of those loans, particularly where there is commercial agreements underwriting those, and there's risks around those being renegotiated, so we've left those as they are. But certainly with respect to the balance of the loan book, we believe there is an opportunity to refinance and extend that, and in doing so, free up approximately $6.7 million worth of cash each and every year. So the analysis within the paper looks at comparing our current long-term financial forecast with each of the four options, which is looking at whether we funded the early repayment adjustment, so by either debt or cash. So there's two options there, whether we did it as a mixture of debt and cash, or whether, and then there is a fourth option there, which is actually around where we work with Gladstone Airport Corporation to make sure that we've right-sized the debt for that business. We've increased the proposed shareholder loan, and kept a portion of our debt to be interest only, and to be matching that of the airport in that space. So at the moment, our debt in that space is wholly interest only. Under this proposal, what we are looking at keeping is essentially $13.6 million of the $33 million debt as interest only, but actually increasing the debt and the airport taking on almost $30 million of debt, 29.8, as being a principal and interest. It would still keep their total debt servicing costs in and around where they are now, with respect. So they don't, in terms of their overall solvency and their overall ability to meet that debt, they haven't increased their repayments to council, but they are looking at certainly taking on some of that debt. There is an early repayment adjustment, as I touched on, associated with the debt, and that's essentially because we do borrow fixed rates, and because when you are essentially extinguishing a fixed rate loan through a renegotiation, you essentially have to pay the penalty rate, and that's the opportunity there, and that is $21.5 million, but the opportunity is more around extending that out over a period of time, and looking at going out over 20 years. So in there is a table there that looks at comparing our base case and each of those options, and you'll see from an NPV perspective, the base case is actually the cheapest, and that's because this is actually around looking at freeing up cash. What we haven't analysed is how you might want to spend that cash in future. So, and some of those might be around, some further infrastructure investments. So we haven't actually looked within that zone, but looking at your current long-term financial forecast and the capital expenditure associated with that. So happy to take questions with respect to it. The recommendation from officers there touches on option 4, which looks at renegotiating those loans. It also looks at renegotiating your shareholder loan agreement to look at the airport taking on an increased level of debt, but splitting it between principal and interest only.
Thanks, Mark. Significant agenda item, councillors. Over to you, Deputy. You had a question?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Mark, can you just explain to me the option 4 there? So 29.8 million portion of the airport loan refinanced as P&I, then the remaining portion and the ERA funded by debt and refinanced as interest only. So when does the principal of that be paid? I'm just looking at that graph and it's all expected to be clear in the same time frame.
So at the end of 20 years, you would still leave $13 million as the would be outstanding, because essentially the principal remains outstanding at the end of the 20 years. So it's only interest only, that component.
Okay, thank you. That's what I was wondering.
Yeah. So at your current shareholder loan agreement actually has $33 million. That is would be outstanding at the end of 20 years in terms of the airport needing to renegotiate that debt. But our current QTC loan is full principal and interest. What this proposal does is essentially match that, to essentially match council's debt with the profile of our subsidiary entity, and in a manner in which that ensures that, you know, we're freeing up that little bit extra cash, but it enables that transparency between the two. So
with the, because looking at the graph, what's the name of the graph? The comparison graph between the 4 options and the base option there. 106 million in total for the base option. So if you add the 13 million onto that 108, which you'll still effectively have to pay back at the end of that 20-year period, you're considerably more. With the other options, there's no.
So base case is your current debt.
Yep.
Yep. So you're not. There's no interest only component with that. So essentially, you would be extinguished that debt.
And there's no interest only component for options 1 through to 3, is there?
That's correct.
So they're all a reflective. Okay, thank you.
Mark, we have done a really good job of paying down debt over a number of years, and I realise we didn't anticipate COVID, and nor do we expect air travel to cease, pretty much. So can you just talk me through it a bit more? This is a significant request.
The opportunity here is actually around, essentially, you know, stimulating economic activity through capital investment. That is essentially the principle and the reasoning behind the offer from the Queensland Government in this space.
Well, then that's fine, and then I'm happy with that. But if we're going to make a decision to defer the loans, and I love the interest rate, 1.715. You're kind of mad not to accept that interest rate, I get it. But it is around us. That's what I'm hearing from the state, is that this renegotiation, the extend out of the debt at a cheaper interest rate, it frees up cash for us year on year to spend on infrastructure projects that would create jobs in the local economy. When do we have that conversation about what we're spending this money on, what infrastructure projects we're using, or is it option for another year of a rates freeze? Can you use it for operational? What is there any terms and conditions from the state on what we do with it?
No. So there's no terms or conditions on it. And in terms of from financial forecasting perspective, we haven't looked at essentially second guessing how we might spend that and what capital investments we might make, or whether you wanted to use it to offset rates or etc. So we've at the moment. We've just done the modelling based on looking at what that looks like from a reduced loan repayment perspective.
Thank you. Councillor Muscat, then Churchill.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just, I guess I don't have a specific. Well, first of all, there's 2 things to this. It's deciding whether we're going to refinance, but then there's also the review of the policy. So the debt policy. I probably would have liked those 2 to come separate, but I can see how they relate to each other, because I have some questions very specific to the policy, but we can do one without the other in a way. We could be reviewing the policy without refinancing anyway. Would that be?
You probably can't. So in order, your debt policy needs to reflect your current borrowing strategy and position. This is a significant change in that, and one that wasn't contemplated when we adopted the debt policy in July with budget.
Yeah.
So you do need to, when we are looking at making that application for borrowing, we need to make sure that our debt policy is congruent with that application.
Yeah. That if
so
we
that's,
do
and, that,
do it,
and hence that's why it's attached.
Yeah, that's if we do decide to go for
That's right.
Any of the options apart from the first one, which is to do nothing really.
Correct.
Now, I'm just reflecting on what our mayor just said, as to we would be mad not to accept an interest rate so low, but however, the way I'm seeing this, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, it's the state trying to free up, allowing us to free up some cash to invest in, addressing COVID situations or stimulating the economy. We earlier had a discussion about different projects and what we do with funding that we receive from different sources, and how hard it can also be sometimes to then do more and more projects if we don't have the resources necessary to do that. But the way I see it is the fees, the early repayment adjustments and all that we will have to pay, they're quite significant. So to me, I'm seeing it more as they trying to actually get some money, and then we just by telling us that we are free, we're going to get some extra money to spend on different things, which we still owe, and then we still have to pay anyway.
So from a Queensland Treasury perspective, we have Queensland Treasury Corporation works. How they actually fund their business is actually through that admin margin, the 0.11% that's there. The bit that's actually associated with the early repayment adjustment is actually about how they actually borrowed the money in the first place to actually lend to local governments. So when they've gone out to essentially fund a state loan book, they've actually gone to market and offered government bonds at the time of whatever the market rate was. So when we drew down debt, it might have been 2012 and the rates were around 5.01%, that's what would have been offered as a return to those people who invested. They've still got those people are still receiving the 5%, and QDC still has the obligation to pay that 5%. So essentially that's what that early repayment adjustment is essentially is the compensation for that. That still remains there. So what we are, it's not actually whilst it would be great if it was essentially foregone, that is essentially what the early repayment adjustment is there. So there's not actually a profiteering of that. It's essentially reimbursing the state or any other bank when you have a fixed rate loan for the cost of borrowing at that time.
Yeah. Thank you. Can I just confirm that then if we go for option 4, the penalty that we're going to have to pay, it's, I think, I can't find it right now, but 0.68 or...
Total penalty is around about $21.5 million.
If
we still have to pay the early repayment adjustment on the full on that balance,
which is the
21.495.
No, but what will we have to pay as a penalty as soon as we refinance this? If we do go, say, for option 4,
$21.5 million. And the proposal though is then we're looking at funding some of it by debt. That is essentially just adding it onto the loan and paying that back over time. So with respect to our airport agreement, that's what we're doing that. So that's 13.06 million. And what we will do is, out of our cash reserves, pay the balance. Then the $8.4 million we'll actually pay in cash.
Okay, so this won't be affecting, like I know we have our financial report later on in the agenda, where we're forecasting.
Yeah, so at the moment, if should you make a decision here to go with a debt refinancing, we will have to do a budget amendment that takes this into account and do a formal budget amendment.
Okay. There's also questions that I had about the policy specifically, and that is obviously the way in which we will, I guess, spend the money that we borrow. But I don't know, I can just leave it for later if we want to continue to talk about the options. Because my questions are specifically to what we will spend the money on if we were to free up some cash.
I agree. I've got some questions on that too. Councillor Churchill, then good luck.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Matt. I'm still trying to come to grips with this, as whether we're actually having a talk about whether it's a financial debate, whether it's an economic debate or an economic stimulus debate, or stimulating the economy, or delivering of assets that have been on our asset delivery list for some period of time. But Mark, thank you, and thank you, I suppose, to your team as well behind you that have been working on this to try and bring it. I mean, this is an opportunity. It is a great opportunity for the refinancing perspective, but I'm trying to also put it into my own understanding, and I suppose over time, you know, my own experience becomes wisdom. That in the common lay area, in the commercial and the business, and in even personal affairs and business affairs, you know, and financial advisors, effectively, when you take out these new loans or you take out a loan, there's a common philosophy that says never pay the minimum. Never pay the minimum, unless, of course, there's a tax incentive that's attached to it, I suppose, on a minimal pay down. So my question, I suppose, at this stage is that in amongst your options here is that if we are going to go down this path of refinancing with the minimal interest rates, and is that likely to go down again further, or is it likely to go up again? That's crystal ball gazing. Is that why can't we continue, if we take up the new agreement, the refinance, we extend the loans, why can't we continue to pay the same amount to pay down the debt? I mean, does that in my opinion, is you never pay the minimal, you're paying it off to eliminate it, unless of course there's a tax benefit. And unfortunately in local government land, I don't think we get any tax benefits, do we? So I mean, my question really is, I suppose, you know, do nothing. Well, do nothing's not an option, so let's refinance it and let's get the opportunity. But are we having a finance debate here about it, or are we talking about stimulating the economy? Because I'd like to think that debt reduction should have been the first priority, but again, maybe that might come up in the policy debate. So I've got a couple of questions in there. I just need to get it clear in my own mind.
To me, if this is a straight financial decision, you do nothing. This isn't about the best financial decision is just to continue to pay down debt and leave it as it is. The opportunity, though, is actually about freeing up some of your cash and doing at the lower interest rate. So you'll see from the MPV analysis that base case that sees us paying off our debt by 32, 33 comes out the lowest. And that's because, but it does mean, so you don't incur an early repayment adjustment, and essentially that's what would happen if we were to accelerate payments. Yeah. So if you were to refinance and accelerate payments, you end up where we are in terms of probably either option 2 or 3. Yeah. In terms of is where you go, but you do incur a early repayment fee if you were to essentially accelerate any payment. So you recall in 2016 we paid down $15 million in debt, and at the time we incurred $2.1 million worth of early repayment adjustment. This is the same scenario in terms of you essentially paying out your current debt and replacing that with new debt, but just at the lower interest rates. And then the ability to repay that over time. And because of obviously the lower interest rates and the longer term, that then frees up cash flow given where we're at.
Okay, Councillor Goodluck, Trevor, then back to Councillor Muscat.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So just a couple of questions, Mark. The ERA effectively, if we pay the loan out over the course of the ordinary term, we will pay that figure, that sum anyway. So that interest that it becomes the early repayment adjustment, that's what we will pay if it's paid out on the ordinary course of the loan
Yeah, so if you actually probably look at those numbers and work your way through, through each one of those years and those base cases, you've got those higher levels of repayment in each one of those years. Starting in 21, 22, you've got 11.9 million, and then works its way down, and some of our debt falls off 10.6 and the like. You are incurring that up front. That's right.
Yep. So when we look at it, it's not so much a penalty. It's we've got to pay that figure. It is a penalty, you know what I'm saying, but we've got to pay it one way or another. Irrespective of which option we choose, we will be paying out that figure. So I just have another question. The option 4, so we've got 108 million over the term of option 4. We've also got the 13 million that will be left over as it's interest only. And then you've also got an $8 million payout of the ERA through our cash reserve. So the total amount paid for option 4 will be 129 million. Is that correct? Am I reading that right? So
it's your $13 million. Your that $8 million is already baked into your. That's already worked your way through. It's in that 2021 figure. So it's actually it's your 121. It's 108 plus your interest only. Okay,
so the $8 million is paid out of the cash reserves in that 2021. That's the 15 million.
That's included in that 2021 figure.
Righto. So basically, it's going to cost us more money in the long term, which I understand that, but the benefit is if we take an option. So I get that. The benefit is, as you've pointed out, that we free up our cash reserves in the coming years, which enables us to do certain things, whatever things we decide. Every single option sees us under the department's recommended 3-month coverage ratio, leading into that 24, 25. So obviously we've got some big expenses coming in during that time. Is that some major projects? I can't recall if them.
So that blue line at the moment, so the light blue line, that's the bottom line in that cash expenses graph, represents your current strategy at the moment and the funding of that. So what we're doing was actually repaying debt, continuing to invest at a rate that was in line with essentially replacing your assets as and when they fall due through your depreciation expense, and then looking at the additional capital being funded through grants and the like. We were looking at utilising our working capital facility if we required it for several months at that time, recognising that's probably due to our timing of our cash receipts and how we essentially receive most of our income in September, October, November, and so therefore we only generally would go into essentially that deficit below the red line for several months a year. So that's just recognising that that's picking up what your 30 June balance would be.
And then just lastly, it does mention somewhere there in the report, I'm just trying to find it, whether is it QTC, if the department doesn't accept the interest-free option, what happens to that option 4 then?
Yeah, so
interest only. So
essentially, it would just become principal and interest only. So there's no interest only; it just become principal interest as it is now. So we'd still have a shareholder loan, and be looking at structuring that, which would actually see the airport taking on more. So that's a separate agreement. So they would take on a P&I component and have an interest only component in and around that $13 million amount. But should the department not accept the interest-only application, then our debt would just be principal and interest.
For the whole lot?
For the whole lot.
Yep, and that will still free up $38 million.
It frees up, there's a little bit less, but yeah.
Over 10 years.
That's essentially option 3.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. I think you've almost convinced me, but I'm still thinking it through. Councillor Trevor?
Thanks, Mayor. I think from a strictly financial point of view, the option is to do nothing. That's fairly clear from my reading of the report, and I see no grounds nor basis upon which this council would want to stimulate the current local economy when we are going fine. There is no suggestion that the majority of people are doing it tough. Certainly there are some pockets in our community that are still struggling during the coronavirus pandemic, and it may well come to pass that we will be a victim of COVID at some stage in the future. I think from a futuristic point of view, we should revisit this report if in fact our community is impacted significantly by COVID. But in the short term, and being COVID-free, I see no reason, financial or otherwise, to do anything other than what we've been currently doing, and that's not borrowing more money and paying down debt. Since I arrived back at this council in public life in 2016, it's been no secret that I have been focused principally on the repayment of council's debt post-LNG. My position in relation to that remains so. I went to the last election as on the basis of that being the main platform, that if re-elected to this council, I would maintain my position as it has always been during the past 5 years, and that would be to leave this council, hopefully, with one legacy, and that was to pay down debt as much as I possibly could by advocating around this table that we should not borrow any more money and that we should continue to pay down debt. As I say, our economy locally is travelling very well, and I see no need to re-borrow, or borrow for that matter. I think our assets are good. I think there is lots of things on our wish list that we won't be able to deliver over the course of this council term, but that happens during every council term, whether COVID is around or not. And if the alternative amendment to our current position in relation to paying down debt is to stimulate our economic activity, well then, personally, as I move around the community, I don't believe we need it. Where we haven't had one person in our industrial community who's lost their job as a result of COVID. Not one person in all of the industry in our town, major industry, that has lost their job because of COVID. Our tourism sector is booming, as we heard in the last hour, and overall as a community we're doing very, very well in comparison to others. I gave this council an opportunity when I came back to public life in 2016 to provide an opportunity in exactly the same way which we're seeking to do as some of the options today, by allowing us to borrow more money and free up capital to spend on projects. And that was to sell the Gladstone Airport for in excess of $100 million, pay off the $55 million debt and have a $50 million future fund for things such as COVID. My arguments in relation to that didn't succeed. And I'm not about to borrow money today because that wasn't considered as an option.
Councillor Muscat, and then Councillor Hanson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, again. Okay, I'm just trying to organise my thoughts on, I guess, what is it that we're talking about here. So we have an opportunity here to refinance at a lower interest rate, which is actually going to cost us more money. So
In penalties.
yes, and I guess we, at the same time, can I ask you, there is a rationale about that, obviously. We're going to free up some capital, we can spend more money in local projects or whatever we need to spend money on. Now, is if we were to see, I kind of agree with what Councillor Trevor has just said, but in part, not 100%. So, at the moment, I'm sitting in this place where I don't actually want to do anything, because I don't actually want to, go a pathway that is going to cost us more money. Now, but at the same time, I am not opposed to further borrowings. So if we were to, for example, in the next 6 months or so, establish some kind of pathway to see how we can actually take advantage of lower interest rate loans, would that be, we will be able to do anything at a new interest rate, for example?
Yep. So any borrowings you undertake at the moment would be at the market rates that exist at the time. So
which are?
As I said, that around that 1.7.
Okay, so
they
is.
They are the current rates. They may change between now and then. I don't anticipate they'll change significantly, but that's what's there at the moment.
So we could actually have the best of both worlds in a way. We could just leave the things the way they are, where we can actually pay and maintain this responsible approach to what the debt that we have, and then decide, following the reviewed debt policy, to borrow on projects or expenditure that we consider necessary or beneficial for our region, in the current climate, and in a way, maybe it is, I think it's a wonderful opportunity right now to, not necessarily because our community needs it, but because of the opportunity of such low interest rates, to do it now, where there's some projects that we might have done, left it for another 5 years, but at the moment we have the opportunity to do so because of the low interest rates at the moment. So we don't have to wait 5 years. We can do them now, either for economic stimulus or because it's actually the best opportunity at the moment to borrow. So is that kind of...
Yep, so those options have been available for quite some time, and each and every time we review the debt policy and we bring your budget, your long-term financial forecast forward, those opportunities to invest and borrow at current rates are there. So they've been low for the last 12, 18 months and are forecast to remain so for the next couple of years, certainly as a result of the COVID-19 situation. So they remain, and those opportunities remain there. So this was an opportunity that was put out there. It doesn't mean we have to take it up, but it is out there. Certainly one thing we would need to would look and take off the line is just with respect to the impact to the airport. That has in terms of, if we left it as it is, they would continue to pay debt at essentially under the current shareholder loan agreement unchanged. But I think we'll need to actually, if there was no appetite to refinance, we would need to renegotiate that shareholder loan agreement in the next 6 months to make sure that we are right sizing that, to make sure that entity is not only providing the right return to council with respect to its debt, but it's also structured so it can actually make a economic return as well.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think I guess again, I know you every year bring the option of borrowing more, but I guess, as you said, the last 12, 18 months, interest rates have never been lower, and I find that as an opportunity, but not necessarily as a refinance opportunity, but as to borrow for certain key projects that we see as priorities in our list, and that are probably not at the moment in our long-term financial plan. So, thank you.
Councillor Hanson, good luck, and Churchill.
This is the way I see it through the Mayor. Is this is not extra borrowings, it's a refinancing of the loans we have. It's not extra borrowing, and yes, it will free up $6 million a year or whatever, but I would like, I'm not sure our asset base in council is as good as what Councillor Trevor says, as I'm hearing differently, but I've got no evidence of exactly where we need to spend money on that asset base. But if we have a need
and it hasn't been proven to me yes or no, I would consider option 4. But if it comes back to me or to us to say that our asset base is in good shape and we can continue on the way we are, then surely we'd stay where we are. So it's a little bit of a yes, here and there. What I'm saying, is that about right? Because I haven't heard anything about our asset base or where we need to go, what we need to spend on that in the future years.
From a this has actually just been presented as a refinancing paper and probably doesn't look around those reinvestment opportunities and just looks at around what your capital expenditure as forecast within your long-term financial forecast. Certainly about asset impacts that are coming down the pipeline, they haven't been contemplated within that. And certainly as your asset management plans mature, I think we will have some financing challenges with respect to those. But as you say, there are opportunities at those times.
That's my concern, and therefore, if you're freeing up cash, we may be able to achieve those sorts of things more readily. And it's not about borrowing any more money, it's about refinancing a loan.
I'll come to you too, Councillor O'Grady. I just want to follow up on that. So the way I see the totals down the bottom, Mark, there's a difference of about $2 million in total. Is that right? Between one staying as is and option 4 over the period. Is that right?
We've also got $13 million that will be left.
There's still a trailing piece with respect to that.
Yeah, but the loan repayments go from $10 million and $6 million a year to $4 million a year.
Yeah, so in the option 4, you're only paying, there is $13.6 million that you're only paying interest only on. So there's a component of that debt that isn't fully being paid out. So we would still have that as a trailing debt option.
I got you, righto. Just
and because there is no term with respect to that, we haven't put a discount on that.
The interest rates we're paying on some of these loans are 6.8, 7.2,
Yep.
7.6, 6.7. They're really high, and that's why the monthly repayment, well, not yet monthly, the annual repayments are huge.
Yeah. So
it is a refinancing. It's not borrowing more.
This is just totally refinancing. This is no proposal to borrow. This is just refinancing.
Yeah, but putting on.
Only with respect to the proposal is only with respect to the airport debt, because you've got an underwriting shareholder loan agreement.
Few councillors, sorry, got Councillor Goodluck, Churchill and O'Grady. Sorry,
I just wanted to respond to Rick. Yeah, sorry. Last week, the AREC committee went and had a look at some of our ageing assets and whatever else, and I think this is a great opportunity in the future to have a look at our ageing assets and put some money towards them. Otherwise, we'll be in the situation we are with some of them that are failing at the moment.
You, Councillor O'Grady, Councillor Goodluck, then Churchill.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Mark, have you had any indication about how likely option 4 is to be granted by the department, or is it likely to revert to option 3? And in the event that the department declines our request for that interest-only proportion, does this recommendation today then mean that we go straight to option 3?
So certainly from our initial conversations and subsequent conversations with both the department and QTC is that there's every likelihood that option would be approved. It certainly isn't the norm. It isn't the norm, but what we've got is a compelling case with respect to our shareholder loan and the matching of that, and make sure that we're essentially then from a commercial perspective, we're just matching those incomes and those incomes and expenses at that time side by side. And therefore, in terms of the intent of what this paper was about, it maximises that in terms of freeing up cash. But certainly, the intent would be that we then, should that not be able to be at work, you would then go back to option 3.
Thank you. I came in this morning with a view that I was going to support the base case, but I think what concerns me is the number of years that we will be in deficit, that we will be approaching if we maintain our status quo. In that circumstance, we either have to work out a what was the option called, the capital working system that you've got noted in the report there. I can't remember the name of it, but some sort of capital system where we're basically essentially further borrowings. Is that essentially the case? For example, 24...
working capital facility. Yeah.
Working capital facility, thank you. Either that or we have to put rates up. There's going to be projects that potentially our community is going to be in need of that we may not be able to deliver without making some of those, very difficult decisions. So that's my biggest concern. And if I look at over the next 20 years, let's say roughly $250 million annual budget over the next 20 years, that's $5 billion. It's probably going to work out to be more than that because obviously it'll grow over time. But if we look at the extra cost to us today to take up that option, you're looking at about 0.2% of that total budget over that 20-year period by some very rough calculations. So not even 0.5% of the total cost of our budget over the next 20 years. But what that will do is free up potentially, if I'm understanding this right, $5 to $6 million a year, whereby it enables us, first of all, not to go under that, into that deficit line, and secondly, it gives us the ability to be more flexible and more adaptable to our community's needs, particularly in the next 5 to 6 to 10 years, where we might need to adapt to these needs. As Councillor O'Grady mentioned before, we went out and looked at some of our very expensive projects where we're dealing with major sewerage upgrades, major water pipeline upgrades, these major projects that we need to be able to attack on behalf of our community to make sure that the water comes out of the tap when we turn the tap on. So I'm happy, I think, now with option 4. If that reverts back to option 3, I think we're still in a better position in the next 10 years to be able to address the needs of our community and free up that cash flow.
Thanks, Councillor Goodluck. Councillor Churchill?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Matt. I suppose Councillor Goodluck, the way he's espoused it, has probably got to the point that I wanted to emphasise, but I do have a question between the option 3 and option 4. In fact, coming in today for this agenda item, I was probably more focused on the base case, no refinancing, but in understanding local government land and then trying to understand the aspect with Queensland Treasury Corporation and the list goes on. And I don't know why we have to suffer the penalties of early repayment, but that's just my own point of view. I wanted to ask the question in relation to option 3, option 4 with the refinancing, more so with the airport. And I suppose, and I agree with Councillor Trevor's comments in relation to the aspect of the airport, or more so the airport loan. So option 3 separates it. Is that correct? Option 3 separates it so that the principal and interest is for everything other than the airport.
So the principal,
right?
What option 3 does is essentially capitalise the early repayment adjustment. So it adds it on to the loan balance for the airport and for the airport only. It says that we'll pay everything else out as cash.
All right then. It goes back to my comment earlier. We're talking about a finance matter rather than an economic stimulus or stimulating the economy or even the economic debate. And also we don't have before us the long-term financial plan in relation to our commitments to assets, but I'm sure we'll get to that. If, for example, and there's a bit of crystal ball gazing in this as well, is that if there is an exponential increase in the airport over the next 20 years, does that effectively allow for that debt to be reduced considerably or eliminated? Because you indicated earlier before it was interest only.
So
And it'll still be the same debt in 20 years' time.
So your returns you get from your, essentially your commercial entity, you could choose, it'll be up to, I guess,
So-
council, how it uses those. You could utilise those, if the airport was doing swimmingly, you would be getting increased dividends. You'd also be receiving increased, essentially, repayments in terms of tax equivalents. So at the moment, if you were to refinance under option 4, it's essentially a net outlay of $680,000 a year to council. At the moment, our net outlay with respect to the airport is $4.1 million, excluding dividends and tax equivalents. That's just the essentially the competitive the shareholder loan payment and what our loan obligation is. At the moment, we rely very much on that dividend and tax equivalent component to lower that gap. So what we're saying is, even if the airport was to operate neutral, essentially it now comes down to essentially $2.8 million compared to what currently was previously a $6.1 million loan repayment with respect to the airport.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Churchill. Councillor Cameron or O'Grady, I'm just seeing if you have questions.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Bottom line is basically, if we refinance on option 4, we have a saving of $6 million a year over 20 years, $120 million. It also opens up opportunities for investment in other capital works and any catastrophes that might come along.
Yep.
Yeah, I debated this one, but I think I'm leaning toward the option 4 because the net benefit overall, I think, just can't be ignored. So I think that's where I'm at. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron. Councillor O'Grady.
I've got enough information, thank you, Mr Mayor, but like I said last week when we went and had a look at our waging assets within our community, I think we need to go with option 4.
Thank you. Councillor Muscat had further questions regarding policy.
Well, I wanted to go into, yes, the policy. So if you allow me to, just got some, I can also see we're using a new template. Thank you. It looks nice. There is mention here I wanted to know if in any place we're going to talk about the investment decision framework when it comes to projects that will, when we talk about, for example, construction of new and replacement infrastructure, have we thought about, I guess, making sure that we incorporate sort of that into how we would then, I guess, for example, if we have something that comes through that avenue, that
So
that will be
investment
incorporated.
Decision framework is about setting up a framework about how we go through a very much a gated methodology about putting projects into our capital works program. Our debt policy is probably about how we fund that program, whether it be through rates, cash, or debt.
Well,
in simple terms. So at the moment, the debt policy hasn't necessarily contemplated. I guess it's assuming that the capital projects have been, once we've gone and put them in our long-term financial forecast, that we put the appropriate rigour and assessment against that, and then we're looking at how we're funding it. So they're very much two different pieces of work.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess it's just some of the wording, and the same when it talks about when possible, external borrowings will be limited to the funding of major items of physical infrastructure whose life will exceed the term of any loans, and will occur where these works cannot be funded by council's own resources. And I guess this goes back to my last point. Is it something that I don't know, we might want to rephrase as in where works cannot be funded by another best possible solution, I guess. It's not necessarily like if we find that we have something to do that, we can borrow money at 1% interest rate. It might actually be better to do that than just to get council's own resources.
Yeah, so that's basic. So it's basically the council resources there is probably anticipating, do you want to go use essentially a cash at bank? Do you want to go and actually probably ask the community or for more? Do you want to look at our fees and charges or other ways or external funding from other sources to how you might fund it?
No
and then looking as debt then is the last option. That's probably where it's looking from a resource perspective. We've excluded all those, we've looked at all those opportunities, and then debt's the last piece.
Yeah, well, sometimes there's, I don't know, I don't agree that will be the last resource. I guess, you know, I will probably borrow to do a project and at a 1.5 interest rate, then, you know, put it back onto increase fees and charges, for example, depending on what's happening in the environment, the economic environment at the time.
You incur a cost associated with that, so you want to make sure we identify that.
But yeah, I guess it's just saying very much so that we're going to use our own resources before we even look at that. And I don't know if that's kind of the best financial decision, and the policy is locking us into it. So
it's guiding that. So it's certainly saying that, you know, we will look for particularly
where possible,
and utilise our own resources, because sometimes we may not. It might be something that we're not willing. It might only be very much a short-lived asset. Might only have 3 years life. Well, we wouldn't look at borrowing for something like that.
No.
But something that has a 30 or 40-year return, and it might be something that we need to look at borrowing, and even furthermore, strengthen the case as if it has a commercial revenue stream attached to that. You know, whether that be water or sewage, whether that be essentially anything to do with our landfill, and that there is actually fees and charges that actually do help to service the debts on those.
Yeah, I can see that the policy's been written sort of to be very much against borrowing, and it's probably not. I'm not against borrowing when borrowing is the best decision, that's all. But I guess it's just worthy. Yeah, that's right.
Sorry, I've got Councillor Goodluck and then Councillor Trevor.
Am I right in saying, Mark, the other thing that option 4 does for us is actually frees us up to the possibilities of future borrowings. As Councillor Muscat's saying, you know, I think we've all made had a conscious position over many years to pay down debt, and we've all still got that position, but that's notwithstanding, we might need to borrow for something at some point in time. Under the base model, given that our cash flow goes into the negative in 23-24, you essentially can't borrow without either increasing rates or cutting projects, etc. By utilising the opportunity before us with option 4, we have the potential. You know, we've got a $4 or $5 million a year cash positive, where if we decide that there's an emerging need for our community, that we think the best option for that is to borrow more money, we've got spare cash to be able to make those repayments. So it frees us up for the possibility of that. If we stay in the baseline, that's a whole nother scenario. We've got to make some other very tough decisions. My only last question, sorry, and I'm happy to move after Councillor Trevor's spoken next. But how long is this option on the table from QTC, Mark? Is there a deadline?
Yep. So essentially, your options, the applications under this need to be in by the end of this month. So it was proffered in September, and then we've had those discussions, with all the stakeholders since then. Yeah, this is on the table through to February. But that doesn't necessarily preclude you from having those conversations with QTC and the stakeholders at other junctures. The difference that is offered in this offering compared to others is the opportunity to extend that debt over 20 years. That's the differing piece. That's, if you wanted to go and repay debt early, those options are always there for you, or to refinance. But the opportunity to refinance debt that might be coming up pretty close to term, and then extending it for an additional 20 years, that's the opportunity that's provided in this case.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Trevor.
Thanks, Mayor. Just 2 questions, Mark. Less borrowings, less interest payments. If you borrow less, you pay less interest. Is that right?
It will actually be, so in this case, our interest in total, you will be incurring the interest as an early repayment adjustment. So yes, correct.
Yeah.
You will be if you were to borrow less, you do have less borrowings, but the opportunity in this case as presented, we will actually, once you incur the early repayment adjustment, which is an interest payment, the early repayment adjustment is an interest payment. That is essentially what it is there for, and therefore you are incurring that. The difference in the cash flow is essentially the difference between the interest rate and the admin fee. So there's an ongoing admin fee that the QTC charge each and every quarter based on the size of your debt, that 0.1%. That's the bit that's saved. But yeah, so as you say, less borrowings, less debt. But I guess at the moment our borrowings, as you can see, do have that average rate of debt in and around that 6% mark. You know, what we will be looking at then is obviously looking at borrowing at the current rates.
And if you pay off your debt, there's no interest payable in the future, is that right? I thought I learnt that in grade 10.
That would be depending on what you spend your borrowings on too. So we borrow for different things. So if the borrowing is spent on something that provides revenue, then it's just the way we work. That's what there's borrowing there, and everybody does it. So that's what we've done with a number of assets that we have. It's not just about the interest rates.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Goodluck is happy to move that recommendation, I believe. Is that right? Yes, thank you. I'd have a second. Seconded Councillor Cameron. Is there any further discussion, councillors? It's a significant item, as I said earlier. I think we've
Just clarified. Yes. So we're moving the option and also the changes in the policy.
Yes. Yeah. So the resolutions to give effect to essentially what we've been discussing is essentially you're proving to basically refinance those loans as listed. You'll also look at putting a submission into the department to convert the current shareholder loan with Gladstone Airport Corporation from the current agreement that looks at just interest only to an expanded amount. In total there, $29.8 million that's principal and interest, plus an additional 13.6 that's interest only, and then you'll look at concluding that negotiation and delegating that authority to the CEO. And then supporting the application that we need to make to the department is the revised debt policy.
Thank you, Councillor Goodluck. Before I put that, you had something else to add?
And I just wanted to reiterate the early repayment adjustment. It's not necessarily a penalty. We've locked in a deal at the start of that loan to pay a certain amount of interest, and whether we pay that interest over 20 years or whether we pay it out early, we still have to pay the interest. So that's why it's an early repayment adjustment, not a penalty. We have to pay that money irrespective. The only extra cost is the added 1.8%, I think it is roughly, on the new loan, which is a small price to pay to free up millions of dollars a year that will enable us to better service our community. So I'm happy to move that. Thanks.
Already moved and it's already seconded. It's by Councillor Cameron as well. No further debate. I'm going to put the motion. All in favour? Those against? The motion is carried.
Division required, thanks, Mayor.
No worries, a division called, so all in favour. Councillor Goodluck, Councillor O'Grady, Councillor Cameron, Councillor Hanson, Councillor Churchill and myself in favour, and those against. Councillor Trevor and Councillor Muscat were opposed. Thank you. Let that be recorded, and we'll break for morning tea.
Yeah, Matt, before you break...
Sorry, Josh, hold that.
Just a quick one is that now that decision's made and it's been live, as the learned elected members have tried to grapple with understanding this particular one, I just hope that we've got a message that we can have, if the media approach, that we can put it into some simple terminology or
Absolutely.
straightforward terminology, if that's possible, so that the people in our region will understand the decision.
Absolutely, thank you. And now we'll break for morning tea.
Gladstone Regional Council are committed to fostering a proud, involved and engaged community. The Gladstone Regional Council Community Investment Program provides financial support to local community initiatives, projects and events which promote community connections, regional enhancements, community celebrations and community education. For more information on the Community Investment Program, visit gladstone.qld.gov.au. Gladstone Regional Council. Connect, innovate, diversify.
Sign up to Council's disaster and weather event warning system. Receive alerts about emergency news, severe weather events and other public safety alerts via SMS or email. Registering to the disaster messaging system is free. To register, visit Gladstone Regional Council's Region Watch website and click on the Register for Warnings button. Get ready, Gladstone. Take the steps to protect what's most important to you. Let's be better prepared and protected for emergencies and disasters.
Illegal dumping and littering is a concern across the Gladstone region, with over 134 offences in the last 18 months. Our region is beautiful, but there are a few bad apples that ruin it for the rest of us, and they need to clean up their act.
Commonly found items at illegal dumping sites across the region include car bodies and batteries, mattresses, tyres, white goods and furniture, and green waste. These items can be disposed of at any of the region's waste transfer stations, some of them even for free.
Illegal dumping and littering pollutes our environment, harms plants and animals, and detracts from the enjoyment of our public spaces. It can lead to stormwater and ocean pollution, with large amounts of plastic, sugar sachets, and cigarette butts caught in stormwater traps and grates.
It's cheaper for everyone to dispose of waste correctly. Illegal dumping and littering cost our ratepayers thousands of dollars each year in waste management and clean-up. It's also costly for our dumper, with penalties of up to $10,000.
We can all work together to keep our region beautiful and dispose of waste responsibly by placing rubbish in the bins, or even holding onto the rubbish until you're near a suitable bin, and using our local waste facilities. Don't be part of the problem of pollution. We want you to be a part of the solution.
From towns to the bush, illegal dumping and littering is everybody's responsibility. Protect our public spaces and natural environment by doing the right thing for today and tomorrow.
If you see illegal dumping,
Dob in a dumper.
See it, report it, stop it.
Gladstone Regional Council are committed to fostering a proud, involved and engaged community. The Gladstone Regional Council Community Investment Program provides financial support to local community initiatives, projects and events which promote community connections, regional enhancements, community celebrations and community education. For more information on the Community Investment Program, visit gladstone.qld.gov.au. Gladstone Regional Council. Connect, innovate, diversify.
Sign up to Council's disaster and weather event warning system. Receive alerts about emergency news, severe weather events and other public safety alerts via SMS or email. Registering to the disaster messaging system is free. To register, visit Gladstone Regional Council's Region Watch website and click on the Register for Warnings button. Get ready, Gladstone. Take the steps to protect what's most important to you. Let's be better prepared and protected for emergencies and disasters.
Illegal dumping and littering is a concern across the Gladstone region, with over 134 offences in the last 18 months. Our region is beautiful, but there are a few bad apples that ruin it for the rest of us, and they need to clean up their act.
Commonly found items at illegal dumping sites across the region include car bodies and batteries, mattresses, tyres, white goods and furniture, and green waste. These items can be disposed of at any of the region's waste transfer stations, some of them even for free.
Illegal dumping and littering pollutes our environment, harms plants and animals, and detracts from the enjoyment of our public spaces. It can lead to stormwater and ocean pollution, with large amounts of plastic, sugar sachets, and cigarette butts caught in stormwater traps and grates.
It's cheaper for everyone to dispose of waste correctly. Illegal dumping and littering cost our ratepayers thousands of dollars each year in waste management and clean-up. It's also costly for our dumper, with penalties of up to $10,000.
We can all work together to keep our region beautiful and dispose of waste responsibly by placing rubbish in the bins, or even holding onto the rubbish until you're near a suitable bin, and using our local waste facilities. Don't be part of the problem of pollution. We want you to be a part of the solution.
From towns to the bush, illegal dumping and littering is everybody's responsibility. Protect our public spaces and natural environment by doing the right thing for today and tomorrow.
If you see illegal dumping,
dive in a dumper.
See it,
report it, stop it.
thank you, councillors. We'll return back to the agenda, and the next item on the agenda is G4.2, which is the monthly financial report for the period ending 26th of January 2021. And I'll hand back to you, Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This item is your monthly financial report through to the end of January. So just trying to call out a few things with respect to that. Your revenue is quite steady and overall sitting at around about 85% of our forecast position, with $160 million recognised to date out of a $187 million forecast. The primary outstanding pieces with respect to that are your outstanding water consumption charges, as well as with respect to our federal assistance grants, which will come through towards the end of the financial year, particularly in that May-June period where we receive over half the funding in that space. With respect to our capital revenue, you'll note that our capital revenue will lag our capital program because generally we'll acquit those projects once we've spent the money. So at the moment we've received $8.7 million out of a budget of $27 million, so around about a third of the way through that program, and you'll see a list of the projects for which we've received that money year to date. With respect to our expenditure, we are literally in an overall position, essentially literally bang on pro rata. So we're at 58.49%, 58.3 is pro rata. So we're essentially, from an overall position, we are right on that mark there. However, if we look into it on a more granular basis, our employee benefits are still running a little bit higher. They're at 61.7% of that forecast position, so still a little bit over pro rata in that space. And that's offset, though, by some of those lower materials and services spends. With respect to our capital expenditure, we've spent $30 million of our capital program through to the end of January. However, the forecast position still is that we're looking at spending in and around $67.9 million, so a little bit over our budget there, based on the forecast provided through our works delivery team in that space. With respect to our outstanding rates, we are ahead of where we were at the same time last year. So through to the end of this month, we're at 9.3% compared to 11.5% the previous year. So we are a step change there, and the difference is we actually have resumed some of our actual debt collection program in terms of just making contact with ratepayers and trying to establish those repayments, and that is yielding some dividends in that space and making sure that we are getting that money in. Overall, our ratios remain aligned to forecast, and we are probably expecting that within our February forecast we will see a realignment based on what our for essentially 6-month budget review, but also reflecting some of the recent decisions we've seen in the space as well, particularly around your refinancing and the like. You'll need to ensure that we amend that budget accordingly in that space. So we'll be looking at incorporating that within future papers moving forward. But happy to take questions.
Councillor Goodluck, question?
Happy to move, Mr. Mayor.
Move Councillor Goodluck, second Councillor O'Grady. Any further questions? No, we'll put the motion. All in favour. It's carried. That was easy, Mark. Okay, G4.3 is the operational plan quarter two report, and I'll hand over to the Acting General Manager of Strategy and Transformation, Sarah Hunter. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good morning, councillors. Today, Leslie and myself are presenting the quarter two report for the period of September to December 2020. The report identifies a number of highlights achieved within the quarter across our 9 strategic goals, plus the progress of our 15 operational plan activities. The report highlights that 87% of our operational plan activities are reported as on track, with 2 of our activities, or 13%, presenting as of concern. Both of the activities that are reported of concern are planned to come back on track and completed within the financial year. This style of quarterly report is quite new to our business, and we anticipate that as we mature in the space, we'll continue to identify and implement improvements. This quarter, we've been able to improve the explanation of the relationship between the overall status and the progress percentage, the KPI status markers. We have infographics now for each of the 9 strategic goals. We have comments now against each of the 15 operational plan items, and there is now a % complete column against each of the COVID recovery plan items. We'll take the report as read and welcome any questions.
Thanks, Sarah. Councillors, questions? Councillor Hanson.
Sarah, through the Mayor. I've just got the one question, page of the report, page 12 of 22. Key performance indicator, and it's got a red light. 95% compliance with audit items within the agreed time frame. Have you got a breakdown of where we are with that at this moment? Our goal is 95%, but where are we? Do we have a breakdown of that?
We've chatted with the manager in audit with respect to these items, and they've been working quite hard over the last few months on some lag items. They're progressing well and expect to be in green status within by the end of the year, but they do still have a few items that are lagging, so they're not on track at this point. At this point, yeah. They have, however, eliminated all but one items from the previous financial year, which those values are in this KPI.
Thank you.
Councillor Muscat.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I really like the new format. Thank you. I love the highlights. Sometimes it's hard to pick them, I guess, but I wanted to just highlight the keeping with the times part in your ethical and responsible government, and I think that's actually, well, I guess COVID driven in a way somehow, but I think that's the way I like to work, and the way in which we also going to continue to attract better people, and those ones that their lives don't fit in the sort of 9 to 5 scenario, but they have a lot to contribute when it comes to different ages, different family arrangements, etc., etc. So I'm really happy about that. I also note that there's a few things that they have probably been done by now, but I guess they haven't been reported because this is the last quarter. Will that?
Potentially, if they've only just been done, though, will flow through to quarter 3 reporting.
Yeah.
So, like you said, we haven't been able to capture all our highlights. There's many, but this is also going to be able to help us capture our annual report stories as well. So it's a staging point for us to get that final annual report collated.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's great to see that. Obviously, then it might not take you as long to collate everything at the end. There was a question I had in relation to, you have in page 14, smart asset management, and we talk about the amount of responses that we had with our survey. Is that still continuing? Because I know that there was 321, and it would be great to have a few more maybe, since we have so many, out of 64,000 people.
Originally, the plan from SAP was that they were going to be doing continued surveys, but I understand they're reviewing their approach and how they're doing the surveys, and working with the engagement team to be a bit more strategic with the community and make sure we're not fatiguing the community with surveys. So I'm not 100% sure where that is at today, but I know that they have been in discussions about it.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I was just, with my point earlier, was, for example, we have review of GRC procurement policy almost complete, focusing on maximising local content spent, which is what we probably did 2 weeks ago here when we reviewed the procurement policy. So I guess some of these items have been completed, but they're not showing because it's reporting the last quarter, not the quarter we're in now. So, no, well, yeah, it's very good. So thank you. The same as the RV dump point in page 20, so which now has been almost completed. So
this reports to the end of December.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you.
So Grady has a question.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think the report's great. The thing that alarmed me actually on this report was 304 litres per day per person. And we all know the dam's down nearly to 50%, it's 53%. So I was just wondering whether we could run some sort of campaign around that again, Kylie. That just, just stuck out because it's right there, which is great. And that's what it's to do, sort of stick us in the eye, basically. So I was just wondering, can you do something around that?
Councillor O'Grady, it's a great point. We had a very successful Waterwise campaign with Miriam Vale, and we have actually regionalised that campaign, but we will be uplifting that in light of the reduced dam capacity. So thank you.
If I may, Mr Mayor, just to add to that, we're anticipating in the coming weeks for the Gladstone Area Water Board to provide advice on any restrictions and triggers that may come into play because of the dam level. So we were trying to wait until we had a trigger point that we could maximise it, and obviously working in partnership with GORB as well in terms of consistent messaging for our community. So it's a point well made, and we're very aware of needing to do more work there.
And the rain dance would be handy. Councillor Goodluck, did you have? Are you moving or have a motion?
I really appreciate the format. It was clear to see. I was quite happy with 95% of the indicators and how we're tracking, and I even liked the some of the highlights that you and the team have put out there. It's really interesting for those that aren't watching. I think it was 898 trees and native plants planted, 35 full-time apprentices and trainees, which is really great, and 64,000 or 65,000 tonnes of gravel utilised in road construction. So it just gives some, paints a small picture of the magnitude of work that happens across the 10,000 square kilometres of the Gladstone region by Gladstone Regional Council. So thanks for the report. I'm happy to move, Mr Mayor.
Seconded, Councillor Hanson. Any further questions? No. Put the motion. All in favour? And it's carried. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Leslie. Next item on the agenda is G4.4, which is the Phillip Street Communities and Family Precinct Terms of Reference, and I'll hand over to the General Manager of Community Development and Events, Kylie Lee. Thank you, Kylie.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, Councillors, CEO. The report that we're bringing to you today is the terms of reference that have been developed by our Phillip Street Working Group. Just for some history, on the 2nd of November, Council did resolve to appoint an advisory committee to inform the strategic planning, the management and the service delivery at the Phillip Street Community and Families Precinct. A working group has been in place for over a year, and we've been meeting very regularly just to operationalise the precinct. It's a big job, and it's a collaborative approach between ourselves, the Salvation Army, Department of Communities and GAPDL's Communities for Children. The development of the terms of reference has focused on 4 main outcomes or objectives, and that is to really advise Council on the project progress and proposed initiatives, to advise on the opportunities to offer services and improve the community's physical and mental well-being, opportunities for lifelong learning to assist children and young people and their families to transition through those learning stages, and to advise on the performance and creating a sense of community connectedness from the precinct. The membership of the committee will be 1 councillor, 1 representative of council, 1 representative from the Salvation Army, 1 from Communities for Children, and 4 ordinary members, which are including within those 4 a representative from youth and a representative from our Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander community. There will also be 1 further community member representing business and industry. Ex officio representatives will be the Mayor and a committee secretary, which will be an employee of council. All members will be subject to a council resolution and approval by council, and it is envisaged that this committee will meet for a minimum of 6 times per year. However, we expect that to be more frequent in the initial stages of the precinct opening. The advisory committee will provide a formal progress report to be presented at a general council meeting every 6 months or at a term that's more suitable to council. And any committee requests or recommendations or advice will be presented to Council through an officer's report or through a deputation from a committee representative. I invite any questions or comments with regards to the terms of reference.
Thanks, Kylie. Questions, councillors? Councillor Churchill.
Yeah, thank you for that, Mayor Matt. Yeah, no, great terms of reference. It was really in the objectives that I was trying to find in either one of those four that you've outlined that are, made available to us. Where does the fiscal overview, where does the philanthropic, where does the funding or the budget or opportunities that might, and I read in 3.2, and I was trying to grapple with 3.2 that it might fit in there if the committee identified a funding source or a philanthropic source or whatever to improve the facility. It says there to offer services, opportunities to offer the services. That's fair enough. That's programs, projects, services and whatever. But what about the opportunities that might come along with any areas of philanthropy that might bring about an improvement in the actual site, in the actual facility, and which might flow on to the operational aspects? And again, we haven't seen what the costs are going to be, on an annual basis, and I'm sure that that's going to come at some stage. Does the committee take a role in that, or is that Council's responsibility to take a role in that?
I can answer that in two parts, Councillor Churchill. So the everyday management of the precinct and the operational cost will be managed by our engagement and partnerships team through my portfolio. The strategic funding will be a component of the committee's responsibility. So they will be looking for funding for relevant programs or infrastructure development, and then that would obviously come through here for any recommendation to proceed.
Thank you.
Councillor Muscat, then O'Grady.
Thank you. Thanks, Kylie. I had a couple of questions, and I guess going on to what Councillor Churchill just said, I'm okay with what the committee will advise Council on, but I guess it's probably maybe not so clear as to what is that they're not doing, and some of that was around the finances, for example. Will the committee or the group have a working plan? Will they report against certain things? Sort of, that's not really in there, and I think it will be important to maybe just have a clear understanding as to what is outside their scope. The next one was that will be money, but also a selection of tenants, or not just finances. But now the other one was we have ordinary members 4, and we talked about including a representative from the region's youth and one from the Indigenous community, and also one representing business and industry. I have 2 questions about that. One is, can you explain to me a bit more of the rationale behind the business and industry part? I mean, it's just that I'm not necessarily understanding why we have to have them if we only have 4. And that could be someone that can be brought in every so often as a ex officio, or other allowances that the terms of reference allow. And also, have we thought about having a representative from a culturally and linguistically diverse background? And the last one was in point 8.2, when we talk about virtual meetings required due to public health emergency involved with COVID-19. I mean, I don't know what the future is gonna include, but maybe if we just leave it a bit more broad, as in it could be anything. It could be also a natural disaster. It could be any, public health issue. But that was just more about the wording. We don't have to do everything. It could be as simple as people can't travel because we have a natural disaster around, or then we might have another pandemic of some other sort. But, yeah.
Thanks, Councillor Muscat. I'll try and answer all 3 of those questions. That's okay. So what's not in their remit, I can make that a little more clear. And I will bring something back. I'm actually doing a councillor information session, info session next week on Phillip Street, so we'll be able to make a few things more clear. The service mix and the tenancy is a responsibility of the advisory group, and it's quite deliberate to make sure that we are providing the best services within that precinct. A gap analysis was undertaken before we went through the expression of interest process to ensure we weren't just replicating services, we were getting the services that we need as a community. There are some KPIs being developed because it's critical that we measure the success for this precinct. It's absolutely critical. So we're working with CQU. Maxine Bruce has been driving that project to develop how we actually successfully measure the precincts, the precinct for Gladstone region, sorry. I'm really interested in having a cold representative on the committee. I think that's a really good pickup. Thank you, Councillor Muscat. I believe the rationale around industry is simply that over 50% of the community are employed by industry. So that was coming from that perspective there. And I do note, I think we should broaden the virtual meetings. That doesn't need to be COVID specific at all. So thank you. Did I answer everything then? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I guess we can also, if we're going to start targeting different groups, we can ask for someone representing the older or senior residents, or sorry,
us,
Rick's friends. But we can also look at things, people from the disability sector, and which in this case we could, if we are also interested in having this place be focusing on our, well, I guess have it central to our living in place, or is that what we call our strategy? Yeah, so that will be very interesting to consider, having someone that will be able to represent our senior citizens. But yeah, I know it is just not that simple, but.
And I think you touched on it before, Councillor Muscat. We will be bringing in knowledge experts when we need them on particular items. So definitely be consulting with our seniors and our disability sectors as well.
Yeah, well, my rationale when it comes to culturally and linguistically diverse people, our community has at least 15% of people that live here were born overseas. So, and that doesn't count the people that will be second or first generation Australians that will have parents or they speak English as a second language or other languages at home. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Muscat. Before I throw to Councillor O'Grady, in that item then 4.1, is it best just to leave it under ordinary members, up to 4 ordinary members, full stop? Because if we start, I hear what you're saying, include them, but then include someone from the disability sector, include someone from another. I think if we just include 4 members and leave it up to the committee to get a cross-section of the community, then that's probably best. Is that okay?
Happy to make that change.
Councillor O'Grady?
Thank you. Mine's actually on the same ordinary members. It's got 1 community member representing business or industry. I think that's a little bit too open scope because it says 1 community member. Maybe you should say 1 community member, 1 business or industry representative, not a community member. So anybody from the community can't go and represent the. I
think if we cut it after 4 ordinary members and don't have specifics, it'll achieve the goals that everyone's trying to achieve. Like
so I'm talking about the business and industry. So just state business and industry. That's the one underneath it. Or because I'd hate to think somebody from the community that doesn't represent that, that doesn't have a business or in the industry representing the community.
Would Council be happy if I just changed that to 5 ordinary members and we trust the committee to get a broad scope of the region? Yep. Yeah, cross-section of the region.
Yeah.
No, I think we state this, what you've stated is fine, and someone's got their microphone on. I'm happy with pinpointing those members of the community for this group, yes.
So
Councillor Gray finish, and then I'll come back.
Yeah, thank you. So that was and the next one was 6.5, which if members a member does not attend at least 3 meetings, then it goes on without prior notification, proposed absence, their position may be considered. I don't think their position should be considered. I think if you're going to represent the precinct and whatever, or be part of it, I think they need to go to every meeting. That, 1 or 2, but I think once they've missed 3, I don't think may should be included in that.
And it says specifically without prior notification, so that's someone who doesn't turn up to 3 and doesn't let you know they're not coming. Yeah. Fair comment.
So that's all, thank you.
To Councillor Muscat, and then we might need to tidy that 4 up because I'm not sure we have had consensus.
Yeah, thank you. I was going to just make a suggestion as because I hear Councillor Hanson also, it is important sometimes to pinpoint certain groups because of their underrepresentation in general of those groups in places, in committees and boards, etc. But maybe if we just word it in a way in which it says we'll have 5 ordinary members that represent the diversity of our region or our population, and that could actually, in a way, be done by statistics as well. So if Councillor Hanson is happy to have something like that.
You're putting me on the spot. I just like to have representatives. There's no representative there from disability sector or anything like that. So, and if you just ask for 4 members or 5 members, who are you going to get? What are you going to get? You might get someone from the arts or something like that.
So, thanks for the encouragement.
Yeah. I just think we need to I still stick with the point that we need to pinpoint and try and get that representation across the sectors that need to work this place. Thank you.
So just on that particular point, with that encouragement from Councillor Hanson, with someone from the performing arts, or be it the arts, it probably does raise the point that perhaps, in light of saying whatever it may be or who they represent, the committee can also make a determination to ensure that they have a skill set for the committee that really, I suppose, extrapolates what's really required as representatives of the diverse aspects for what the facility will be for, rather than just picking someone from the arts.
I agree, Councillor Churchill. The advisory membership actually comes to Council for approval, and arts has been obviously recognised as a substantial factor in mental health and wellbeing, so it is really important. We do have skill sets from our officers that will be part of the actual committee through our interagency connections and forums such as that. So where we don't have the skill set, we obviously will target those members. Okay, does that answer your question?
I'm satisfied with that. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just to comment, I think we probably need some guidance either way, because with only 5 members, it will be impossible to be representative of the community and include all of the different people that councils are thinking of, and very good suggestions. So I think it either has to be you identify there are a couple of particular groups that you really want to be represented, or that it's reflective, reflective of the community.
Through the chair, in normal not-for-profit boards, and this is not a board, but in arrangements with not-for-profit boards, the group, when it's formed, can then set what sort of members that they need to have in. But prior to the formation, I think we should make it. We should pinpoint what we need in that group. But once the board is there, any further additions or subtractions from the board can be made from within that board, because they'll be looking at the skills that are needed on that particular board.
So the recommendation here, the structure of your committee, has been a recommendation from the existing Phillip Street working group. So they felt that they needed to target those 2 particular areas.
once this has been resolved, I mean, the terms of reference can be altered or amended down the track, can't they? So, you know, if we adopt this in principle, you can rejig it along the line. Yeah, okay.
Councillor Goodluck, then Councillor Muscat again.
I'm happy with the terms of reference. The appointment of members is determined by a resolution of council. So if there's any discrepancies or any changes that council wants to make, it will come to council for determination. We can ask the committee, you know, about their recommendations, etc. We'll have that opportunity to make any changes that we deem necessary. I think it is. I'm happy with the way that it's pinpointed a certain number of representatives. I think that's important, because if you just go a broad, generic approach, you often find that you won't have that cross section. So I'm happy to support as is.
Got Councillor Muscat, then Councillor O'Grady.
Thank you. I guess, yeah, I can see the importance of pinpointing the groups, and I guess I'm probably back on the same thinking as I was before, where if we have 4 members, I will then pinpoint them to, and I understand what Councillor Goodluck is saying, those appointments will come here. If we don't like them, then we can say something, but that isn't likely to happen. And this is, again, our opportunity to set the path forward. So I don't see why we wouldn't do it now. Again, I've been a social services precinct. I feel that we should have 5 ordinary members, including a representative of the region's youth, Indigenous community, culturally and linguistically diverse people, aged care, and disability. So it's no disrespect to business and industry, but at the same time, I also find in my experience that people in these roles representing business and industry, they seem to be always the same people, which will be working, you know, in that area for them, you know, community engagement, et cetera, which is great, but they have a number of other ways of inputting into lots of other things that we do. And I would rather have that as a social, from a view from a social perspective. And as you said, most people, 50% of our population work in industry, so it's very likely that more than half of these appointed people will work in industry. And we also have one from GAPDL anyway. So, and also someone from council. So I would like to have 5 cultural linguistically diverse people, youth, Indigenous community, aged care, and disability. Sorry about the arts, but...
I'm happy with where the conversation is going. Councillor O'Grady, did you have something then? Councillor Hanson?
Yeah, I was just wondering when and how you're going to sort of put it out to the community for these groups.
So the four members that we talked about earlier, so the councillor, representative of council, Salvation Army and GAPDL will need to be determined and selected and endorsed by council. The remaining members would go through an expression of interest, which we're intending to do in March. So we're hoping to have this committee active by end of April and being able to educate the advisory committee on the same way of collective change that the working group has gone through, which will really allow us to have that collaborative approach.
Oh, that sounds great, because when we were there the other day, Nathan was saying that the project manager was saying that maybe May all the buildings will be finished, and it looks fantastic out there, so they're doing a great job.
Thank you, Councillor O'Grady.
Councillor Hanson.
No, just that, can I apologise to any artists out there that I may have offended? It was certainly not intended that way. So can I apologise to any artist who took offence at that comment?
I took it as you were offending Councillor Churchill, Councillor Rick.
I took no offence whatsoever.
So I note that one of the appointees is a councillor, and it says the mayor's ex officio. Is there a councillor interested in being on this committee?
I would be interested in being on this committee, Mr Mayor.
Is there more than one councillor? Councillor Muscat is interested as well. All right, let's do the terms of reference, and we can work out who the councillor is at a later.
I could be interested, Mayor Matt, if you need a representative from the arts there.
There you go. That might resolve all the problems. Thank you. All right, I think we can hold up who the councillor is, and we can appoint the councillor when we appoint the other committee members, seeing as there's a couple interested. It's good to see that I have a lot of councillors interested, including the artist over here on the right-hand side. So, Councillor Muscat, did you want to move the motion with those amended changes?
Yes, please. I'd like to move the officer's recommendation that, hold on, it's in my iPad. Do we want to add anything in relation to what is not in the scope of the
Mr Mayor, if I may, that was
decision?
going to be my question. I'm not sure that we're clear on what the proposed amendments are, so whether we need to go through that in detail now or whether council would like the report brought back again with an updated terms of reference, but up to council's
I want to vote on this
discretion
today. It's the terms of reference that needs to be done.
Clear on what the amendments are.
Yep.
Yeah,
in 4.1, if we can take ordinary members, so the wording under ordinary members for 5 ordinary members to include 1 representative of the region's youth, 1 representative of the Indigenous community, 1 representative from the coal community, 1 representative from the aged care sector.
Is it aged care or is it seniors? Is it a person who's a senior that you're seeking there or someone representing an industry?
Well, I guess when it comes to, I guess it's just a community representative that identifies as culturally and linguistically diverse, as a senior, as having a disability, as being young. And am I missing one? That's it. So they don't know. I guess that's a really identifies as Indigenous. Yeah, it
Not
is.
aged care, it's senior. You got that, Carly?
Yeah. So it is. I think it's a great point because they're not representing the sector. They identify themselves as those. Yeah.
How they feel in the community.
Which is something that I think we don't do that often. We have people from sectors representing the people, but that doesn't mean that the people feel that way.
There was another amendment you had further down, I think.
The COVID-19, so to incorporate, I guess, any public health or natural disaster or disruption. I don't know how to word it exactly, but.
If I may, Mr Mayor, I just check with Brooke because this is an advisory committee established under the regulation. It would need to comply with the regulation, so I'm not sure if there's any issues with removing.
Sorry, first time with the microphone. We would need to go back to the legislation to check that. That was an evolving piece of legislation as well, which had a set time frame. So we can make that accordingly, though, to align with that.
We understand the intent, though. Councillor Goodluck, have something to add?
I just want to make a point. I absolutely, support diversity and having that diverse cross-section of members on this committee. But I do think the priority of focus for the role of this committee, as set out in the report, is to advise Council on strategic planning, management and service delivery of the Phillip Street Communities and Families Precinct. And so I just want to make sure that the members that we have on that committee are, I suppose, appropriately experienced or knowledgeable in that field. That's the most important thing for me, to make sure that we get those strategies and to make sure that we get the delivery model, that the service balance right. That's probably in this situation more of a priority than perhaps diversity. If we can do both, I think then that's absolutely something that we should support. I just wanted to make that point. We need to make sure that we've got the appropriately skilled and knowledgeable people on this committee to make sure that we're getting that best advice for that best service delivery model.
If I might, I think that's a great point, but I think we are in the fact that it's actually specified here. I can't find out exactly where it is, but where there's that allowance for them to get people in that have certain specific knowledge, and it's also going to be council in there and a couple of other key stakeholders. This is an advisory role, and not everybody has to know finances at the same time as service delivery, at the same time as how to make a building more accessible, and I think we are doing both. And I think the nature of the precinct and what we want to make of the precinct will be much richer if we have these people because of, their lived experiences. That's why they're an advisory body. They're not going to make financial decisions or I don't know, capital expenditure decisions or those type of things that they will go back to our partnership group anyway, our partnership staff. I think it will be key for this project to be representative of the community and to serve the community to its best of its ability if it has those people in it and we identify them.
Trying to find who the reps will be. There's 5, and I'm happy with the 5 that Councillor Muscat have suggested. There's 1 rep from the Salvos, 1 from GAPDL, 1 from council and a councillor. So the current committee that includes former councillor Maxine Bruce, how does she fit into this new committee?
She no longer does if it's restricted to those.
Can't support that then. I have to include a position for Maxine on this committee because no one understands the project more, except for maybe Veronica, or understands the reason and why it happened and how it became about and its full potential than Maxine. She absolutely needs to be on the committee. So I was actually assumed that she would take the chair, but I'd leave that up to the committee to decide.
You're saying that that's going to happen, Mr. Mayor, that Maxine should be chair?
I said I assumed she should be the chair, but I left that up to the committee to decide, which is exactly what I just said, but I'll repeat it. I assume she should be the chair, but I'd leave that up to the committee to decide. What I'm saying is Maxine should absolutely be on the committee, and I accept what Councillor Muscat's saying about those 5 people, but I think we need to include another member of the community as well to allow someone like Maxine, should she want to put her hand up, and I'm sure she will.
But Mr. Mayor, hasn't she or Maxine already got a role out there with what's happening? I read it somewhere else. She has got a role already with the implementation of the precinct. Is that right?
So, Councillor Hanson, Maxine has been the core of the working group that we have. The working group will disband following the operationalisation of the precinct, and then the advisory group will start to make that strategic planning and management of the facility.
Thanks. I think that it should include 6 community members, including the 5 that Councillor Muscat has suggested, and leave the gap for another person from the community that doesn't necessarily represent those sectors, although potentially Maxine might represent some of those sectors anyway. I'm not suggesting she doesn't.
I understand where you're coming from, and I don't. This is a project that is probably evolved as well from what it was before, and I don't like to be seen as making this project someone's project. This is the community's, the council, the Gladstone Regional Council project, and not someone's project. So I don't think it's. Yeah, plus we don't know if Maxine wants to be in the committee.
Suggesting we include Maxine's name in the agenda, although I'd be happy to. I think it should be 6 to include the 5 you suggested, which I'm more than happy to accept, and also another member of the community that may not belong to one of those groups, which will allow someone like Maxine to be involved.
I'll be happy with that amendment.
Thank you. And are you still happy to move that way?
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Muscat. Is there a seconder? So you're happy to second? Oh, sorry, Brooke, yes?
Sorry, Mayor, I just wanted to confirm if you also wanted the amendment to 6.5 that Councillor O'Grady raised before to change the words may be considered vacant to will be considered vacant.
Yes. I think that's what councillors were happy with.
Yeah,
And 6.5, oh, sorry.
Thank you. And can I have a second for the motion, please? I'll second that from the chair. Is Councillor Goodluck, you have further questions? You're looking at me, so if you don't, I'm happy to put the motion.
Not often that Councillor Goodluck is left
speechless.
Speechless.
No, I'm right, thanks.
Councillor Trevor.
I just wanted to clarify the legal position in relation to the committee. I assume that the committee will fall under the auspices of the Gladstone Regional Council umbrella of public and private liability. I assume that this committee is going to be unincorporated and not incorporated pursuant to the acts, the Corporations Associations of Incorporation Act of 1981 as amended. So the people who choose to serve on this committee, will they be afforded full protection, including legal protection in relation to any decisions that they make? That includes financial decisions and any fundraising activities that they engage in as part of a committee of an unincorporated committee, unincorporated association. Will they be covered by council's public liability?
Thanks, Councillor Trevor. I'll defer for Brooke for the insurance questions. This is an advisory committee, so there won't be decision making at that advisory committee level. Any recommendations or decisions will come to council. But Brooke, would you mind providing advice on the other?
Thank you. Yes, I will check on the insurance provisions of that, but the General Manager is absolutely correct. This is a formal advisory committee as constituted under the local government regulation. It is a similar committee as your youth council currently is and your Seiki sister city group. So it does not have decision-making powers. Any formal decision-making will come back to this table from the committee itself.
I'm happy with that. Well, it's not my decision, but anyway.
Thank you. Councillors, any further questions? Councillor Churchill.
Yeah, thanks, Emma. Just going back to the makeup of the committee, just so that I'm clear in my own mind, is that we set the committee for what it is and the skill set, and I totally agree with Councillor Goodluck. It's not necessarily the area or the sector that you're representing. It's your ability to be able to come to that committee to strategically think, strategically plan for the future. But I'll say that now, which leads me to the question, is there capacity in these terms of reference to allow the advisory committee under the local government regulations to make a recommendation to increase the size of the committee or to invite, coerce, encourage a particular sector that needs to be on the committee that may not necessarily be representative once the committee has been established?
There is opportunity for ex officio people to come and present any gaps that the committee doesn't have. So we will be inviting people to come and speak at our advisory meetings to ensure that we are getting the range of knowledge that we need to make those strategic decisions. Does that answer your question there, Councillor Churchill?
Not necessarily.
There is provision in here to invite additional...
ex officio, but not necessarily a member of the committee, if the committee decides that there's a certain sector that doesn't have a voice on the committee.
That's decided at that time, then maybe the committee would recommend, as they will do, recommendations to council that they increase the number of the committee to include the person that you feel is not represented.
Well, that was my question, because does the committee then have the capacity, which I believe it should, any advisory committee, is to bring a recommendation to this council that says they've identified this gap, this skill set, the sector that should be represented, it's not, and then the council would make that decision.
Councillor Churchill, section 4.3 actually allows for that under the terms of reference, where the committee can request to increase or decrease the committee size.
Okay then, well, I suppose as a segue for the other question is that Gladstone Regional Council, in its capacity, in its entirety for this facility, for the benefit of our residents and ratepayers and future growth of the area, does this committee have, through you, Kylie, as General Manager, or perhaps through the CEO, have the capacity to be able to call in any of our experts, any of our specialists from across the entire organisation of the Gladstone Regional Council, if and when required?
We would ask advice where we needed to, Councillor Churchill, but decisions on actually committing resources, we would have to have those considerations. We have, in the terms of reference, acknowledged that a council secretariat will be provided, but any information that we require, as per equal to what we would do for the social sector, we would do for council. So if we needed some expertise, we would approach. There's no reason why we couldn't approach a council representative.
Thank you.
Further questions, councillors? Councillor Hanson.
I just want to reiterate that 4.2 says the position of committee chair will be determined by the committee.
And so it should. And all the committee members will be voted for by this council. So if someone's name's on there that you don't like at the time, you can vote them down.
No, just looking at process, Mr Mayor, process.
Absolutely, happy to support the process. Councillor Muscat, do you have something or further to add?
I just wanted to make a short comment. And I understand when we talk about skill-based and expertise, when we're looking at strategic or any decisions in this instance, but expertise and skills are not excluded from diversity, so they're not. There's no reason why we cannot have both in the same person. So I just wanted to put that there, because we're not sacrificing skills because we're putting a culturally and linguistically diverse person on the table. So, and we're not sacrificing expertise because we're putting someone that has a disability around the table. So that was, and it is very well catered for those people to receive information, specialist information, whenever they need to, for anything that they're lacking, depending on the issue they're talking about.
I agree with you more. You've put the motion, I've seconded it. We have those corrections and alterations, rather. No further comments, so put the motion. All in favour? Those against, the motion's carried. Thank you, and thank you, Kylie. The next item on the agenda, and the last item on the agenda, is G4.5, which is Business Continuity Management Policy Review. And I'll hand back to the General Manager of Finance, Governance and Risk, Mark Holmes. Thank you, Mark.
Afternoon, councillors. This item is just a review of our current business continuity policy, which was originally adopted in 2014. It's undergone an extensive review throughout the business, with our Manager of Governance and our Disaster Response Specialist leading that. Certainly is a policy that went through a lot of testing and a lot of, from an outworking perspective, during the COVID-19 pandemic. But what this policy do is really set at that very high level just the overall principles that we'll adopt and apply during times where we need to look at making sure that we're supporting our business and our business operations during severe interruptions. So this change looks at aligning those terminologies, make sure we're aligning with best practice and Australian standards, and just making sure that it just links with our current operating model.
Thank you, Mark. It's moved, Councillor Churchill.
Yeah, prepared to move that. It's very well worded.
Yeah. And seconded, Councillor Hanson, and then Councillor Muscat has a question.
It's only a small one, and thanks, Mark. I wanted to, there's in 6.6 policy statement, when I think it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 down the dots, the fifth dot. So demonstrate responsible business continuity management processes that align with applicable Australian standards. Would it be convenient or appropriate to put also international, or as in, I know there's a lot of different things that we have in relation to software, or, I mean, the world is globalized, and especially when it comes to business continuity. I know it's just a small thing, but we leaving anything?
Most of those Australian standards do align with essentially ISO anyhow.
Yeah, just
that's right.
checking.
In some cases are higher. Yeah. So.
Okay, I'm happy. Yeah, but I'm very happy that we have done a review of this, because it's obviously something that is very central to what we do, and especially this time in this day and age. Thank you.
Councillors, any further questions with the motions? Move Councillor Churchill, seconded Councillor Hanson. All in favour? That is carried. Let's see, is there any councillor reports? No councillor reports, no urgent business, no notices of motion, no confidential items I have missed? No? Fantastic. I'll declare the meeting closed at 12:33 p.m. Thank you, councillors, and thank you, officers.